Marvel's master of multiversal magic. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 426: Fighting and Creation. Of the 6 Infinity Stones, the Power Stone is the most important. Used alone, it can destroy a planet. Together, it powers the other stones, enhancing their strength. Because the Infinity Stones can only be used within their own universe, they are merely beautiful stones in other universes, which is why George wasn't particularly keen on collecting them before. However, he now realizes that while he may not care about the Infinity Stones, others might. A single stone poses no threat, but too many could be dangerous. So, since he's already out, he might as well grab the Power Stone and store it in his special dimension. The Power, Space, and Mind Stones are with him. The Time Stone is with the Ancient One. The Reality Stone is still sealed. Only the Soul Stone is scattered throughout the universe. Even if someone finds the Soul Stone, passes its test, and obtains it, it alone cannot pose a threat to him. Furthermore, while the Infinity Stones are external powers, they can still be useful against stronger enemies. They are not entirely useless. In the future, once he reached a certain level in magic, he might be able to comprehend something even deeper by utilizing the laws within the Infinity Stones. Therefore, upon leaving Xander, he changed his mind and decided to detour to Magra to retrieve the Power Stone, knowing it would only delay him by 1 day. A day later, Sanctuary II arrived above the sea-covered Magra. Approaching to the ocean, George closed his eyes and began to use his mental energy to sense the Power Stone. Although the Power Stone was enveloped by the cosmic orb, the terrifying power it contained could not be hidden. With focused attention and time, he could definitely sense it. Found it, sure enough. An hour later, he pinpointed the approximate location of the Power Stone. Transform. Opening his eyes, he used his transformation magic to become a large fish and plunged into the sea. He was already quite skilled with his transformation magic, able to transform into almost anything he wanted, although his magical power couldn't be fully unleashed during the transformation. However, it was more than enough to deal with sea monsters. He didn't even need magic, his superpowers were sufficient. All the sea monsters and giant fish that approached him in the ocean, wanting to devour him, were instantly charred black by the lightning emanating from his body. Powered by the lightning, George, now an electric fish, quickly found the cosmic orb containing the Power Stone in a palace. Got it, he placed the orb into his transformation space, reverting to human form, and apparated back to Sanctuary II. Alright, let's return to Earth. Star-Lord and the others exchanged bewildered glances, wondering what George had found in the ocean, but obediently piloted Sanctuary II towards the jump point. 5 days later, Sanctuary II arrived on Earth. George explained the general situation of his trip to Professor X and the others, then relinquished his duties and went back into seclusion. The Nova Empire had a very sophisticated process for introducing less civilized planets into the space age. With Professor X and Kelson's cooperation, there were basically no problems. As for whether the high-ranking officials of various countries would cause any trouble, the Nova Empire's ally was George, not Earth. Helping Earth enter the space age was solely because of him. If the high-ranking officials of various countries don't know their place, then the Nova Empire will help Professor X and his team teach these disobedient guys a lesson. While Earth in the Marvel Universe is busy entering the space age and carrying out space colonization, in the world of Cardcaptor Sakura and Sioran's collection of Clow cards is also coming to an end. Grandpa, Sakura and Tomoyo invited us to Tokyo tomorrow. At the dinner table on Friday night, Lee Xiaolang said after finishing his meal. Lee kneeling next to him also put down her chopsticks and looked at George expectantly, afraid that George would disagree. Go ahead, take plenty of money, boys can't be too stingy on dates, be careful. George smiled, waved his hand to cast a housework magic to clean up the dishes on the table, took out a Clow card and handed it to Xiaolang. I've almost finished studying this fighting card, return it to Sakura tomorrow, and borrow the creation card while you're at it. Not long after capturing the Thunder card, Xiaolang's cousin Li Miling chased after him to this place. They are both juniors in his body, so naturally he takes care of them as well. Later, Sioran and Sakura's relationship grew closer, especially after they met each other's parents during their trip to Hong Kong. They were practically on the verge of marriage. Therefore, he could easily borrow Clow cards from Sakura to study. However, to avoid interfering with Sakura and Sioran's collection of Clow cards, he only borrowed one at a time, changing cards only when he felt he had studied them sufficiently. He didn't interfere with Sakura and Sioran's card collecting process, neither helping nor causing trouble. This was a trial and game Clover had given his daughter, and there was no real danger. His goal was to study the magic left behind by Clover, especially the Clow cards, which were created by concentrating the essence of his magic. Recently, he had been studying the fighting card, a magical card that combined the fighting techniques of the entire world. Even if you're a complete novice, without any training, using this magical card would instantly turn you into a top-tier fighter. His close combat skills remained at the level of sheer strength and throwing bricks, relying purely on physical prowess and reflexes to bully others. His actual fighting skills are only slightly better than ordinary people, and that slight improvement comes from the mutant lab he learned. With the same physical attributes, he'd be easily defeated by someone like Captain America. Although he primarily uses ranged magic in combat, compensating for his lack of close combat skills isn't a bad thing. He's almost finished researching the Clow cards. By casting the Clow magic on himself, he can overpower even a master like Captain America with his superior skills, given his physical attributes. As for the creation card he'll study next, it's an extremely valuable card to him. As the name suggests, it's a card that can create everything. Using the creation card grants a book. Anything written in it can materialize in reality. It's practically a manifestation of the laws of creation. If he can fully comprehend this card, he might be able to create a world entirely of his own in the future. Therefore, the more he studies the Clow cards, the more he feels the power of Clover. No wonder that just because of a strong desire in his heart, he was able to prevent Yuko's death and give birth to someone of Fei Wang Rido's caliber. Chapter 427 Contact and Probing. Grandpa, we're off. The next day, Li Xiaolang and Li Miling, carrying backpacks, said goodbye to George and set off to meet up with Sakura and Tomoyo. It seems a dream card will appear today. Come to think of it, we're almost finished collecting the Clow cards. Maybe we can make contact with the IRG Ariel before then, George thought to himself as he watched the two children leave. Currently, Sakura and Xiaolang have collected 47 of the 53 Clow cards, and only 6 more are needed to complete the collection. At that time, he would have essentially studied all the Clow cards. But to be honest, at his current level, it would be difficult to fully understand the magical principles contained within all 53 cards in less than 10 years. If he wanted to speed things up, besides gaining something in other worlds, the only option was to find Hierarchy Ariel, the reincarnation of Clover. Hierarchy Ariel is currently the strongest magician in this world and the reincarnation of a portion of Clover's soul, possessing most of Clover's memories. Before leaving this world to travel to other worlds, Clover reincarnated part of his soul as Fujitaka Kinomato, who gave birth to Sakura, and the other part as Ariel Hirajizoa. Therefore, while Ariel Hirajizoa is far less powerful than Clover, he has still mastered all the magical principles of the Clow cards through his memories. If he could communicate with Ariel Hirajizoa, he could certainly comprehend all the magic within the Clow cards much faster. In the evening, after Sioran and Miling returned, they gave the creation card to George and recounted their experiences that day. As he had predicted, they had captured the dream card at the Tokyo Tower, a Clow card that allows one to foresee the future through dreams, and is also an extremely powerful Clow card. After obtaining the creation card, George resumed his focused study of magic, continuing for 3 days. What, you're going to play Sleeping Beauty? George was taken aback by Sioran's words at the dinner table. It turned out that the school was having a talent show this weekend, and Xiaolang's class was putting on a play called Sleeping Beauty. Roles were decided by drawing lots, and Xiaolang drew Sleeping Beauty, while Xiaoying drew the prince. Why do I have to play the villain? I want to play Sleeping Beauty, and let Xiaolang play the prince. Miling, standing nearby, stuck her rice into her chopsticks, her face full of reluctance. She had drawn the villainous Dark Witch from Sleeping Beauty. You two can't be together, George thought to himself, shaking his head. Miling liked Xiaolang, but they were cousins, and cousins couldn't marry. While in a traditional Taoist family like the Li family, it was barely acceptable to be related to bloodlines, cousins were forbidden even within the Li family. So even without Xiaoying, Miling couldn't marry Xiaolang. Of course, he felt that Miling's feelings for Xiaolang might not be romantic love, but rather a brotherly affection that she was too young to understand. He didn't press the issue. Letting things take their natural course is the best outcome, deliberately pointing it out might only provoke a rebellious attitude. He's the patriarch of the Li family, after all, and should consider the future generations. After fully comprehending the magic of all 53 Clow cards, he plans to pass on his meditation techniques and some Taoist and magical methods he's summarized to the Li family. A stronger Li family will benefit him as the patriarch. Ancestor, will you be coming? Li Xiaolang asked somewhat helplessly. The talent show requires parents to attend, and his mother in Hong Kong definitely couldn't come, so he could only ask the patriarch. George smiled upon hearing this. Sure, I'll go see how you, Sakura, and Miling perform, and cheer you on. Thinking back carefully, it seemed that a Clow card would appear at this talent show, specifically the Light card, symbolizing the power of light. The Light card is one of the most powerful cards in the Clow card set. The Clow cards are divided into yin and yang, and light and dark. Yin represents the sun, referring to the guardian beast Ouroboros, who governs light, and light controls fire and earth among the 4 elements. Yin represents the moon, referring to the moon of judgment, which governs darkness, and darkness in turn controls the 4 elements of wind and water. If one can study the transparent cards, the power of fairy law and fairy radiance, as well as the light magic learned from the old guild master, will be greatly enhanced. This will increase their chances of victory against Morgoth in Middle-earth. Sunday morning, Tomoda Elementary School. 3 figures instantly appeared on the roof of the school building. You guys go change and get ready. I'll take a stroll and watch your performance from the audience area later. After patting the heads of the 2 children, Sioran and Miling, George strolled around the already crowded school with his hands behind his back. Watching the performance was secondary. His main purpose was to meet the school's teacher, Kaho Mizuki. Kaho Mizuki is a shrine maiden of Tsukumin Shrine, born with powerful lunar magic. She served as a math teacher for Taoya Kunamoto in junior high school as an intern, and peacefully broke up with Taoya after a year of dating. After breaking up, she went to study in England, where she met Ariel Hirajizawa, and the 2 fell in love. She returned to serve as a temporary substitute teacher at Tomoda Elementary School, mainly at Ariel Hirajizawa's request to help Sakura complete the moon judgment. Contacting Kaho Mizuki would allow her to contact Ariel Hirajizawa sooner, otherwise, waiting for him to come himself would take at least 3 or 4 months. Taoya, didn't Uncle come? He said he couldn't leave the excavation site, and he was very sorry. He asked me to take as many pictures of Sakura's performance as possible for him. He hadn't walked far from the school when 2 tall, thin high school students appeared in front of him. The judge Yu and Sakura's older brother, hearing their conversation and sensing the powerful magic within them, George immediately guessed their identities. However, although he guessed their identities, he didn't actively approach them, as there was no need. After circling the school, he quickly arrived at the school's classroom and office area. Sir, are you lost? This is the teacher's office. If you want to see the performance, it's over there. It should start in about an hour. Inside the office, a long-haired female teacher was tidying up her desk. Seeing George suddenly appear, she paused for a moment, then smiled and stood up. George smiled back. You must be the Ms. Mizuki that Little Wolf mentioned. Such a strong lunar magic. When Mizuki Kaho first came to the school as a teacher, Little Wolf sensed she was no ordinary person and remained wary of her. He even wanted to ask her to help him test her, but knowing Mizuki Kaho's background, he hadn't made a move. Chapter 428 I have offended you. And you are. Hearing George's words, Kaho Mizuki's face showed a puzzled expression. Knowing Li Xiaolang and sensing the magic within her, could she be from the Li family of Hong Kong? Li Zhuan of the Li family, Li Xiaolang's elder. Xiaolang told me that a teacher with very strong magic has come to the school, and seems a bit strange, so I came to check. George stepped forward to Kaho Mizuki. I won't beat around the bush. Since you've returned from England, what's your purpose in becoming a teacher at the school? Is it for the Clow cards? He certainly knew Kaho Mizuki's purpose, but he couldn't appear to know everything now, or he'd give himself away. The Clow cards were magical cards left behind by Clow Reed, possessing immense power, and were the ultimate magical items that all magicians in the world coveted. As the patriarch of the Li family, to protect Li Xiaolang's safety, it was perfectly normal for him to suspect that Kaho Mizuki, who had returned from England, might be after the Clow cards, and to question her. Mr. Li, I think you've misunderstood. Whatever my purpose is, it won't harm Xiaolang. And it will be soon, you'll know soon enough. Hearing George's words, Mizuki Kaho patiently explained. She didn't know why George's existence hadn't been foretold by Hierarchy Ariel's prophecy magic, but since it wasn't in the prophecy, it meant he wasn't a powerful figure. Perhaps Hierarchy Ariel hadn't specifically mentioned it because she could easily handle him herself. Ms. Mizuki, I can't believe you so easily based on your word alone. George shook his head. Either you tell me the reason, or I can only offend you. Mr. Li, I can't tell you the reason now. If you insist, I can only seal your memories for a few days. Upon hearing this, Mizuki's powerful lunar magic erupted, and she formed the Onmyaji hand seals. Barrier technique. A barrier separating the classroom from the outside world enveloped the entire teacher's office. Since the outcome of the moon trial was at stake, she couldn't tell this elder of the Li family beforehand. If things changed and the moon trial failed, that would be disastrous. Therefore, she decided to first set up a barrier to prevent ordinary people from discovering it, then capture this elder and temporarily seal his memories for a few days using yin-yang magic. Japanese yin-yang magic. Interesting. George's face showed interest as he watched Mizuki's spell. In this world, England has magic, China has Taoism, Japan has yin-yang magic, and many countries have their own unique magical systems. Clow cards in Clow Red primarily combine Chinese Taoism and Western magic. As for Japanese yin-yang magic, since it's basically derived from the yin-yang and 5 elements of Chinese Taoism, its essence is no different from the Chinese Taoist magic system, so it's disregarded. Shikigami, earth-binding spirit. After setting up the barrier, Mizuki pulled out a small paper doll, chanted an incantation, and threw it at George. The paper doll immediately transformed into a spirit and bound George. Summon lightning. George raised his hand lightly, and a bolt of lightning shot out, instantly shattering the paper figure into a spirit. Having already grasped the essence of lightning, the Li family's lightning magic he unleashed was so powerful that it would not only strike a mere paper shikigami, but even a true god would tremble in terror. What? So strong? Seeing her shikigami instantly killed and witnessing the terrifying magical power emanating from the old man opposite her, Mizuki Kaho's expression changed drastically. She had initially thought the other party was just an average elder of the Li family, someone she could easily defeat, but now it seemed that his strength was far more terrifying than the current head of the Li family. As a shrine maiden born with powerful lunar magic, she was proficient in various yin-yang arts and the 9-syllable mantra, making her one of the most powerful yin-yang masters in all of Japan. The last person to give her this kind of pressure was Hierarchy Ariel, the strongest magician in the world, whom she met for the first time. I can't win, I absolutely can't win. Without unleashing any more shikigami or yin-yang techniques, Mizuki Kaho immediately withdrew her magic and dispelled the barrier, saying, I surrender, I surrender. Elder Li, please hold your hand, I'll tell you everything. In this situation, she couldn't win by fighting, so it was better to be honest. She believed that as an elder of the Li family, Li Zhuan would most likely not stop the moon judgment. Even if he did try to stop it, she could notify Hierarchy Ariel. If the fight continued and she was injured or trapped, she wouldn't be able to help Sakura complete the moon judgment. Since that's the case, I'm not an unreasonable person. Please, Mizuki-sensei, explain. Seeing that Mizuki Kaho had withdrawn her magic and barrier, George didn't want to continue, but his tone clearly showed some regret. Although Japanese yin-yang techniques and the 9-syllable mantra originated from China, they had undergone many changes. He had wanted to learn from them and see if there was anything worth learning, but he hadn't expected her to surrender so quickly. He should have held back a bit from the beginning. Mr. Li, here's what happened. Fearing George would continue his attack, Kaho Mizuki quickly recounted the whole story, omitting the fact that Ariel Hierarchy was the reincarnation of Cloud. So, I meant no harm, nor did I intend to steal the Clow cards. I simply wanted to help Sakura and Sioran complete the final moon judgment, regardless of who becomes the final master of the Clow cards. Kaho Mizuki showed George the moon bell. This is the moon bell, a magical artifact made by Cloud. It plays a crucial role in the final judgment. I can sense that you're not lying. But there's something I find strange. You said Ariel Hierarchy sent you to help complete the moon judgment, so what is Ariel Hierarchy's purpose, and why is he doing this? George didn't stop there but continued to press. Li Juan remembered the name Ariel Hierarchy. It was the name of the world's strongest magician. How could the Li family not know him? However, no one knew that Hierarchy Ariel was the reincarnation of Clarid, so his question was quite reasonable. This, Kato Mizuki hesitated, unsure whether to reveal the truth without Hierarchy Ariel's consent. This was no small matter. If it got out, the entire magical world would be in an uproar. George smiled. How about this? If it's inconvenient for you to say now, why don't you contact him by phone after the performance and tell me the reason? That way, I can be at ease. Chapter 429 The Strongest Magician in the Present World. Okay, I'll let you know once I've made contact. Kato thought for a moment and nodded. Encountering this elder from the Li family was an unexpected turn of events, so she definitely needed to call Ariel Hierarchizol to see how to handle it. This elder's strength was likely not much weaker than Ariel's, which was why he hadn't predicted her existence. However, she hadn't heard of such a powerful expert in the Li family. Since Clarid's death, the Li family had kept a very low profile. It was said that their most powerful mage was the head of the Li family, Li Xiaolang's mother. It was clear that the family that shared half of Clarid's bloodline was indeed more complex than it appeared. Let's go see the performance then. It should be starting soon. Seeing that her goal had been achieved, George didn't continue the conversation. Kato quickly led George towards the school's performance hall. At 9:30, the performance officially began. In a castle lived a king and queen. Tomoyo's voice echoed through the hall. The curtain rose, and two little boys playing the king and queen appeared. Last night you said you didn't want to play a villain, but you're really into it today. Kids will always be kids. As the story unfolded, the witch Mealing, playing the main antagonist, appeared. George, sitting in the audience, couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. To be honest, even though the performers on stage were just a group of elementary school students, their acting was quite good and very entertaining. The grumpy princess confronts her mother, the first act ended, and the second act began. Sioran, wearing a golden wig and playing the princess, appeared. Because the dress was so uncomfortable, his tone was quite grumpy when reciting his lines. In the final act, Sakura, dressed in a prince's outfit meticulously designed by Tomoyo, appeared. Taoya, sitting in front of George, immediately perked up and started patting his sister on the stage. Here she comes. When the story reached its climax, and Sakura, playing the prince, was about to kiss Sioran, playing the princess, a dark aura instantly swept through the entire performance hall. George immediately sensed that time in the time hall had been paused after being affected by this dark power. The dark card, as expected of one of the two strongest cards, can even interfere with time. He unleashed magical power, repelling the surrounding dark power, and his affected time immediately returned to normal. However, aside from restoring his own time, he didn't take any further action against a card, as it was meant to be a gift and had no malicious intent. Sakura could easily handle it herself. Sure enough, Sakura, enveloped in the dark power of the dark card on the stage, quickly released a light card hidden within her, and then easily captured the two most powerful Clow cards. Only two more left. I guess next week's full moon will be the moon judgment. I should call Ariel Hierarchizoa. On the other side, Kato Mizuki, watching from the side of the stage, breathed a slight sigh of relief after seeing Sakura successfully capture the light and dark cards. Without continuing to watch the performance, she returned to her office alone and called Ariel Hierarchizoa, who was far away in England. Did the capture of the light and dark cards go smoothly? Very smoothly, but there was an unexpected incident. The Li family actually has such a master? I see. Don't worry, I'll fly over tomorrow to meet him. About your family, it's all minor matters. I originally planned to go after the moon judgment, but it's good that it's earlier. I can see the outcome of the moon judgment with my own eyes. While Kato Mizuki was talking to Ariel Hierarchy, George, who was still watching the performance from the stage, smiled slightly. Let me personally experience the strength of you, the strongest magician in the world. His mental energy had been following Kato Mizuki, so he naturally heard her conversation with Ariel Hierarchy clearly. He definitely couldn't beat Clarid now, but Ariel Hierarchy might be a different story. Ariel Hierarchy was a partial reincarnation of Clarid's soul, possessing most of Clarid's memories, but strictly speaking, he was no longer Clarid. there was still a considerable gap between them. After all the performances were over, as George was preparing to go home with Little Wolf and Mealing, Mizuki approached them. Mr. Lee, he wants to meet you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, no problem, George nodded in agreement. After Mizuki Kaho left, Little Wolf asked somewhat suspiciously, Grandpa, when did you meet Teacher Mizuki, and who wants to see you tomorrow night? I just met her today. I tested her, she's not a bad person, so there's no need to be wary of her. As for who will meet tomorrow night, it's a friend I don't know yet. George patted Little Wolf and Mealing's heads. You performed very well today. What do you want to eat tonight? I want char siu, pineapple buns, and wonton noodles. Mealing's eyes lit up immediately upon hearing this. Before coming, she didn't know much about the grandpa, only that he was the highest-ranking member of the clan and had attained enlightenment. After arriving, she realized how powerful the grandpa was, able to carry them flying, teleport them, and instantly conjure up a huge pile of delicious food. Whatever they wanted, they could have. Okay, then let's have char siu, pineapple buns, and wonton noodles. With a flash of apparition, George, along with Siren and Mealing, instantly returned home. The next day, at night, George, who was studying magic in his room, suddenly opened his eyes. Looks like we've arrived. Sensing the clearly powerful magic released, he knew that Hierarchy Ariel must have come to this town from England and arranged to meet him in this way. In a flash, he apparition disappeared from the spot, reappearing above the town park. Hierarchy Ariel, looking at the young magician floating in the air in front of him, with long black hair, glasses, and a 7/10 resemblance to Clover in his memory, George asked with some surprise. In his memory, Hierarchy Ariel was a child about the same age as Siren. But thinking about it, it made sense. Hierarchy Ariel was the same age as Sakura's father, Fujitika, and this was his true appearance. In the anime, he probably deliberately changed his appearance with magic to get closer to Sakura and achieve his goals. He could easily do something like that now. Let alone becoming younger, he could even transform into a table or chair using his transformation magic. It's me. Greetings, Mr. Lee. Hierarchy Ariel bowed very politely upon seeing George. Hierarchy Ariel wasn't Clover, at least he didn't consider himself one. He considered himself an independent individual, and naturally, seeing George, who was much older than him, he bowed out of respect for elders. Chapter 430 A Duel Between Mages. No need for such formalities. Cultivators only value strength, not age. George floated to the opposite side of Hierarchy Ariel. I'm a rather direct person. It's still that question that Mizuki-sensei didn't answer. What is your purpose in doing this, old sir? I may not be able to answer that question right now. Hierarchy Ariel narrowed his eyes, silently chanting a spell. Key containing dark power, reveal your true divine power. According to the covenant, Ariel commands you to release the seal. A sun staff appeared in his hand. He called him over not to tell him the secret of his reincarnation, but to personally erase some of his memories, preventing him from pursuing the matter further. Since inheriting Clover's memories at birth, he had been plagued by a great problem. The magical power within him was too strong, causing him to always be able to foresee future events, which he couldn't control. He wasn't Clover, nor did he want to live like him, so he chose to follow Clover's last wish and help Sakura inherit and fully master the Clow cards. This way, he could use Sakura's power to help him share half of his magic with his reincarnated form, Fujitika. Then he could return to being a normal magician and live a normal life. If everything in the future is predetermined and can be predicted, what's the point of life? Once it's all over, he'll tell everyone the truth and help this elder of the Lee family regain his memories. As expected of that cunning, squinted-eyed guy with glasses, it seems he never intended to tell me the answer, but that suits me just fine. George wasn't too surprised by this, and said with a smile, it seems this old man will have to experience the magic of you, the strongest mage in the world. Clover is inherently a cunning and unscrupulous character, so how could his reincarnated form, who inherited his memories, so easily reveal the reason? In the anime, to achieve his final goal, Hierarchy Ariel altered the memories of Karo and Yu. Therefore, sealing or erasing his memories after telling him the truth is more in line with his style. However, he wasn't afraid. Through his research on the Clow cards and his current strength, he couldn't guarantee he could defeat Hierarchy Ariel, but self-preservation wasn't a problem. Besides, even if he were defeated by Hierarchy Ariel, his memories couldn't be deleted or altered. This was just one of his clones. He had many clones throughout the universe, and his main body existed in Marvel. The moment this clone's memories were deleted, his main body could immediately restore them. Furthermore, if, like last time, the souls of other clones were concentrated into this clone, the powerful soul force could easily deflect such magic. Sir, I'm sorry, Hierarchy Ariel smiled and directly used time magic. Time stop. The power of time enveloped the entire park, freezing everything within, except for Hierarchy Ariel, who remained unaffected and floated towards George. However, he only floated forward less than half a meter before stopping in surprise. It's actually broken, Mr. Ariel. This level of time magic is probably not enough to trap me. A strange magic circle rose beneath George's feet, and the frozen time around him instantly resumed its flow. Although he hadn't yet mastered time magic and couldn't freeze time within a certain range like Hierarchy Ariel, after so much research, using Fairy Tale's Fairy Ball, the Ancient One's time laws, Harry Potter's time conversion charm, and the time and time cards, he was only one step away from mastering time magic. Breaking Hierarchy Ariel's time stop shouldn't be a problem. Hungarian Mirror World. George waved his hand, and a huge mirror appeared behind him. This place isn't big enough. If Mr. Ariel wants to spar with some magic, why not try it in my mirror world? With that, George turned and stepped into the mirror world through the mirror. It seems I underestimated this old gentleman. Hierarchy Ariel, who had been very calm, showed interest for the first time. With Claride's memories and immense magical power, his life seemed to be on a winning streak. Before even reaching adulthood, he was already the world's strongest magician. Even the most powerful old mages in the Magic Association were as weak as ants in his eyes. He had initially thought this elder of the Lee family was at most on par with those old mages in the association. Furthermore, based on Claride's memories, he knew all of the Lee family's spells and should be able to easily defeat him. But now it seemed he had been careless. However, wasn't this unpredictable situation, beyond his control, exactly what he had always sought? So at this moment, he felt a rare sense of excitement and curiosity. Holding the sun staff, Hierarchy Ariel stepped into the mirror world without hesitation. A mirrored space distinct from reality, connected by mirrors, very interesting magic. The moment he entered the mirror world, Hierarchy Ariel roughly understood the principle behind this magic. After all, the mirror cards created by Claride actually had a similar principle. However, the mirror cards replicated people and objects, while this place replicated the space of the real world. Lightning, come. Seeing Hierarchy Ariel enter the mirror space, George didn't waste any words and immediately unleashed the Lee family's lightning magic. Terrifying lightning bolts shot towards Hierarchy Ariel. Shield. Hierarchy Ariel waved his wand, and a defensive spell resembling a shield appeared in front of him, blocking the lightning. However, the moment he blocked the lightning, a look of surprise appeared on his face again. The strength of this lightning magic seems abnormal. He knew the level of the Lee family's lightning magic very well. He could use it himself, but even when he used it personally, the effect wasn't this good. This elder of the Lee family seemed to have taken lightning magic to a new level. As expected of the reincarnation of Claride, it seems that lightning magic alone can't break through his defenses. Seeing Hierarchy Ariel block the lightning magic he had used in combination with his supernatural abilities and magic, George secretly pondered. Hierarchy Ariel's magical protective shield, like a shield, already carried the shadow of laws. Breaking through it wouldn't be so easy. Shift. Hierarchy Ariel flashed to George's back, dodging the continuous barrage of lightning, and launched a counterattack. Shadow. Countless shadows transformed into ropes that stretched towards George's body. The magic shield's defense was indeed powerful, but maintaining the defense indefinitely would make a counterattack difficult. Chapter 431. A worthy opponent. Apparition. George, whose mind had been constantly focused on the surroundings, discovered that Hierarchy Ariel had appeared behind him and launched an attack with shadow magic. He also teleported away. Against a well-rounded magic master like Hierarchy Ariel, he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Once entangled by a shadow, even for a second, it would be enough for the opponent to seize the opportunity to defeat him. Shadowless, George silently chanted the incantation, his body entering an invisible state, concealing all his magic power and aura. Shadowless blade. A transparent blade flew towards Hierarchy Ariel. Strike. The sun staff lightly touched the ground, and a magic circle formed beneath his feet. Dense magical energy burst out in all directions from Hierogissal Ariel as the center. It not only neutralized the attack of Shadowless Blade but also covered George in his invisible state, forcing George to reveal himself and activate the ironclad charm for defense. Disappear. Just then, Hierogissal Ariel smiled slightly and vanished into thin air. Truly well-rounded, George sighed, unable to suppress his urge to utter a sound as Hierogissal Ariel disappeared. He himself had pursued a path of all-around development, mastering various types of magic. In past battles, his vast repertoire of spells allowed him to overcome any type of enemy. But today, he had met his match. Hierogissal Ariel, who had inherited Clover's memories, was also proficient in various types of magic, not much less so than him. Therefore, trying to win through surprise was extremely difficult. Footprint manifestation. Hierogissal Ariel. He released a tracking spell, and Hierogissal Ariel's footprints appeared, pointing directly to the location of the vanished Hierogissal Ariel. This forced Hierogissal Ariel, who was preparing to launch a sneak attack, to reappear. Illusion. In the instant he reappeared, he cast an illusion spell on George. George immediately felt countless Hierogissal Ariels appear around him, each casting spells on him, leaving him unsure of where to defend himself. However, this illusion lasted for less than a fraction of a second before being directly dismantled by his powerful mental strength. Impressive, truly impressive. You are the most powerful mage I have ever encountered. Watching George easily break his illusion, Hierogissal Ariel couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. He wasn't lying. In his 41 years of life, the other party was indeed the most powerful mage he had ever seen, capable of fighting him to this extent. It was as if he was a level 1000 mage, and the strongest mage he usually encountered was only level 10, while George was now displaying strength at level 100. However, this already made him find it quite interesting. It's time to end this charade. Pointing the solar magic circle at George, the magic circle instantly took shape. Hidden dark power engulfed the enemy. Powerful dark magic erupted from Hierogissal Ariel's body, and the entire mirror world was almost instantly shrouded in darkness, attacking George. This dark power is far more powerful than what the dark card showed that day. Seeing the darkness approaching, George sighed while also unleashing his true strength. Both sides are well-rounded, so now it's a battle of raw power, seeing whose magic is more potent and can break through the other's defenses, or a direct magical clash to see who can outlast the other. Gather. River of light guided by fairies. Shine forth. To destroy the fangs of evil. Fairy radiance. A massive light array rose above George's head, countless starlight guided and condensed into a gigantic pillar of light, blasting towards the endless darkness. This was a clash between the forces of light and darkness. In truth, Clover also possessed the power of light, otherwise, he couldn't have created the light cards. However, the reincarnated Ariel Hierogissal favored the power of darkness. Therefore, his creations, Spinner Sun and Ruby Moon, while symbolizing the power of the sun and moon, leaned more towards the dark side. Of course, favoring dark power doesn't make someone evil. At their level, power has no inherent good or bad, nor is it affected by its nature. To think you could do that, seeing George unleash such powerful light magic, his evaluation of George had risen from level 100 to level 300. Looks like this is your limit. With a gentle wave of the sun staff, dark power erupted instantly, actually suppressing the pillar of light formed by the fairy radiance and heading towards George. Clearly, in terms of magical power, Hierogissal Ariel was much stronger. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Watching the dark power gradually suppress the light, George's face showed no panic. This was a reincarnation who inherited Clover's memories and magic power. Although incomplete, it wasn't something he could handle in his current human form. Animagus, heal. His body rapidly expanded, and George instantly transformed from human form into dragon form. The magic power within him immediately surged along with the transformation. At the same time, the power of the fairy radiance also increased significantly with a surge in magic power, barely managing to hold back the dark power. Dragon Slayer magic, tricolor flames. While maintaining the radiance of the super magic fairy to resist the dark forces, George opened his mouth, and flames capable of incinerating everything spewed from his dragon mouth. Dragon transformation. Seeing George transform from human form to dragon form, Hierogissal Ariel was completely stunned. In the magic system of this world, he had never seen this type of magic before, transforming himself into a magical creature and greatly increasing his strength. He could create magical creatures, though. Clover created Caro and you, and he created Spike and Ruby. Moreover, since this person was an elder of the Lee family, if he were to transform into a magical creature, should he transform into an Eastern dragon? Why was he like this? He was neither a traditional Western dragon nor an Eastern dragon. However, the increase in strength was indeed strong, at least now he truly felt threatened. In other words, the opponent's current magical power had reached the same level as his. Even if he was slightly inferior, he wouldn't be too far off. Spike. Ruby. Two summoning magic circles appeared in front of him, with Spike, symbolizing the sun, and Ruby, symbolizing the moon, appearing simultaneously before him. Seeing the approaching tricolored flames, they used the power of the sun and moon respectively to block them. Move. After blocking the attack, Hierarchy Ariel didn't launch another attack. Instead, he withdrew his dark power and teleported away from the mirror world with his two magical followers, arriving in the real world. Looks like it's settled. Seeing this, George also reverted from his dragon form to his human form and left the mirror space with a smile. In this situation, it's highly likely that Hierarchy Ariel knew there was no way to defeat him without injury. So he chose to compromise. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 The Judgment of the Moon. Not fighting anymore, George returned to the real world, above the town park. Ariel Hierarchy, who had already put away his sun's staff, smiled with narrowed eyes. No more fighting. You're a member of the Lee family, and you have the strength. I can tell you the truth, if he went all out, and in the end, his opponent was no match for him, but he couldn't defeat him either, then there was no need to continue. His goal was to fulfill Clarice's last wish and achieve his own objective. He didn't want to tell this senior member of the Lee family the truth, fearing that this senior member would cause trouble in the end because of the ownership of the Clow cards. But now it seemed that the other party already possessed power no less than his own, and shouldn't be so greedy for the Clow cards anymore. Besides, if he really wanted to take them, it would be difficult for him to stop him. It was better to tell him the truth and then discuss it slowly. I'm all ears, George nodded. Actually, he had already used his full strength, but Ariel Hierarchy's performance was still relaxed, so in the end, he would most likely still lose. However, since he had used two magical followers, it meant that even if there was a difference, it wasn't that big anymore. Anyway, his goal wasn't really to defeat Hierarchy Ariel, but simply to make contact and establish a connection so they could exchange magic. It all started with Clarice. I'm a reincarnation of a part of his soul, Hierarchy Ariel no longer hid, revealing everything, including his plans and objectives. After listening, George feigned a sigh. No wonder your staff looked so familiar. It's the same as Clarice's son's staff in our Lee family records, and it can use all the magic from the Clow cards. It's just a pity that our Lee Sioran is destined not to inherit the Clow cards, although Sakura is Clarice's chosen successor. Based on your observations over this period, you should understand, sir. Even if Sakura is the successor of the Clow cards, in the end, your Lee family is the winner, isn't it? Hierarchy Ariel still had a smiling expression. George looked at Hierarchy Ariel and laughed heartily. You have a point. Fine, I won't interfere with your plans. Hierarchy Ariel's meaning was clear. Even if Sakura was destined to inherit the Clow cards, she would still marry Sioran, making her a member of the Lee family. The Lee family not only gained the Clow cards but also a powerful heir. They were the biggest winners. Therefore, as an elder of the Lee family, Li Zhuan shouldn't prevent Sakura from obtaining the Clow cards for the sake of the family. However, I have a condition. George suddenly stopped smiling and looked at Hierarchy Ariel. All that previous talk was an act, not his real focus. His real focus was on the following statement. As you can see, I not only use the Taoist methods of our Lee family, but I'm also studying Western magic, learning from Clarice's approach of combining Eastern and Western styles. So recently I've been studying the magical principles within the Clow cards. Since you've inherited Clarice's memories, would you be willing to guide this old man? Guidance is too much to ask, but exchanging magical insights is no problem. Hierarchy Ariel nodded without hesitation. He wasn't the kind of person who pursued the limits of magic or strived to become the strongest magician. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wanted Sakura to share half of his magic power. Therefore, He wouldn't mind if George surpassed him after exchanging magical insights with him. This condition was really nothing to him. Yes, let's exchange ideas. Seeing that the matter was settled, George didn't linger. He asked Hierarchy Ariel for his address in the town and then teleported back. I never thought there would be a magician in this world who could fight you to this extent, Ruby. You, with butterfly wings fluttering behind her and a girlish appearance, watched George's disappearing figure with a face full of amazement. Spinelson, with wings resembling a black panther and also butterfly-like, replied calmly, Ariel is merely the reincarnation of half of Clowreed's soul, not Clowreed himself, so what? He's still the world's strongest magician. Ruby stuck out her tongue. Hierarchy Ariel laughed. I am who I am, not Clowreed, and I don't aspire to be the world's strongest magician. I just want to live the life I desire. This is good. With Mr. Lee becoming the world's strongest magician, my life will be much easier. The title of world's strongest doesn't just represent honor, it also represents a lot of trouble. There are always people who want to prove themselves by challenging him, others who covet his power, want to exploit it, and others who want to solve problems by relying on him. And he's a quiet person who dislikes so much trouble. A week later, at night, at Tokyo Tower, George and Hierarchy Ariel sat atop a white cloud, watching the moon judgment taking place below. For almost a week, he went to Ariel Hierarchy to exchange magic, and their relationship naturally became much closer. During the same week, Sakura and Sioran also collected the last 2 Clow cards together. He lost. Even without Clowreed's magic, Yu's strength is beyond Sioran's capabilities. Seeing Sioran defeated by Yu in the moon judgment without any chance to fight back, George shook his head inwardly. Although Sioran was young, his magical abilities were not weak among the adults of the Lee family. Outside, he could basically defeat at least 80% of the mages in the world. However, he was facing Yu, the judge, a magical servant created by Clowreed himself. Even though Clowreed was dead, and Yu's strength was greatly reduced due to the lack of Clowreed's magic, it was still beyond Sioran's ability to handle. This was the difference between a normal mage and Clowreed. As expected of her favorite daughter, Yu has gone to great lengths to eliminate her. After Sioran's defeat, it was Sakura's turn. Compared to the decisive and ruthless approach towards Sioran, Yu showed far more mercy towards Sakura. The condition for the moon judgment wasn't actually defeating Yu in terms of strength, but rather gaining his approval. Karo was the one choosing the successor of the Clow cards, so he was already approved from the start. Only with the approval of both Karo and Yu could one truly inherit the Clow cards and become their master. Sioran hadn't even gained Karo's approval, so how could he become the successor? Therefore, Yu went all out from the beginning, eliminating him. After the first trial failed, Kato Mizuki appeared and used the moon bell to secure a second trial for Sakura. In George's view, the failed trial was a ruse. The main purpose was to stimulate Sakura and unleash her potential. All of this was planned by Clowreed before leaving this world. Sure enough, the second trial began. Sakura transformed her bird-head staff into her own star staff, and Yu barely resisted before being captured by the wind card. Chapter 433: A Strange New World. The moon trial ended, and summer vacation arrived. Mealing had realized her true feelings before the moon trial and returned to Hong Kong early, while Sioran went home to further his studies after the trial. George naturally stayed in the town, continuing his research using Sakura's Clow cards while exchanging magic with Ariel Hierarchy, the strongest magician who inherited Clowreed's magic. His magical level improved significantly as a result, especially his time magic. He believed it wouldn't be long before he could fully master Fairy Ball, break the seal on Tenrao Island, and release Natsu and the others. Meanwhile, a new clone was born as summer vacation began. Flamium Academy? Isaac Tabor? Victor? What's going on? George wasn't surprised by the appearance of the new clone. After all, it wasn't the first time, and he was experienced. What surprised him was the world in the new clone's memories. It would be normal to say it was an unfamiliar world, like the world of Fairy Tale or the world of Academy City, which he didn't know. These various worlds might be movies, novels, anime, comics, or even fairy tales and myths from his previous life. He couldn't possibly be familiar with everything, especially since his focus had waned after starting work. He hadn't even heard of many of the new works released in recent years. But this new alter ego's world, you couldn't say he didn't know it, yet it felt so familiar. You couldn't say he knew it, yet it differed greatly from the world he knew. This puzzled him. Why? Let's first discuss the identity of this new alter ego. His name is Jin Bao, a Chinese national, 17 years old. His parents divorced, and he has an older sister named Jin Yuanellen. His sister's name combined with his own is Yuan Bao, signifying wealth, and his father is also a very wealthy businessman. 10 years ago, his parents divorced amicably. The reason was simple, without any messy, dramatic plot twists, simply a lack of love. His parents' marriage was merely a political alliance for family interests, devoid of any genuine affection. Later, both sides accumulated sufficient capital, even becoming influential figures, and naturally, there was no longer any need to maintain the marriage for profit. In the divorce decree, he stayed with his father, and his sister with his mother. His father's company mainly engaged in international trade, so he resided in London, England, and he lived with his father there. None of that really matters. What's truly strange is what happened when he was 11. That year, an owl delivered a letter to him, an acceptance letter informing him that he had been accepted into the prestigious Flamel School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And Flamel School wasn't just any ordinary school, it was a magic school. Does this sound familiar? It's practically the same enrollment storyline from his first alternate world, the Harry Potter world. Only the school name has changed from Hogwarts to Flamel School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. If that were all, he might have assumed this world had Harry Potter novels and movies, and that the wizards in this world had deliberately created a similar enrollment notice for entertainment. However, that's not the case. This world doesn't have Harry Potter novels or movies. The key difference is that the wizards in this world also use wands to cast spells, and the methods of learning and casting magic, as well as the effects, are almost identical to those in the Harry Potter world. Even Headmaster Isaac Tabor and Headmaster Victor look exactly like Dumbledore and Snape from Hogwarts. Many major events in the Harry Potter stories also exist in this world, with some differences in details but similarities in general. For example, the medieval witch hunts and the wizarding wars. However, in this world, Gellert Grindelwald is called Stephen White, and his school isn't Durmstrang, but a European organization called the Emerald Society. He wasn't defeated by Dumbledore, who is Isaac Tabor in this world, but by modern high-tech weaponry. Voldemort isn't called Tom Riddle, but Jerry Mario. Many character and school names are different, and the timelines are different. The Goblet of Fire final in the Harry Potter world takes place in 1995, while in this world it's in 2015. Forget it, let's deal with the immediate issues first, and then explore slowly. After sorting through the memories of his new clone, George slowly opened his eyes. The new world is strange, but since wizards exist, it's unusual. Perhaps further exploration will reveal some useful information. Besides, this new clone is only 17 years old and has mostly been studying at school, unaware of many things outside. Harley, oh, I almost forgot you were here. Standing on my father's bones, I was going to introduce you to them, but I heard you're almost as famous as I am now. The girl who survived, but your legend is built on lies. Let me reveal the truth of that night 13 years ago. In the dilapidated grave, a noseless, terrifying wizard looked smugly at the bespectacled little witch with a lightning bolt scar on her forehead, whom he had subdued. Around this terrifying wizard stood a group of trembling, masked dark wizards. Excuse me, if I said I wanted to leave, would you stop me? George stood up, interrupting Voldemort's resurrection speech in the other world. Indeed, his new incarnation was the Flamel School champion chosen by the Goblet of Fire, equivalent to Cedric Diggory of Hogwarts. After being touched by the Goblet of Fire, he was teleported to this graveyard and then died at the hands of a character similar to Peter Pettigrew. As mentioned earlier, the major events in magic are similar, but many details differ, and his new clone is one such difference. Similarly, there's Harley over there, Harley Evans, whose gender and name have changed. The girl who survived a near-death experience, the school's star student, Headmaster Victor's favorite. Well, actually, none of that matters to him right now. Dealing with this Voldemort named Jerry Mario is the priority. He's still alive. Finish him off, you piece of trash. Voldemort, interrupted, was clearly very annoyed, and even more so when he discovered that the one who interrupted him was the student killed by Pettigrew. What did this mean? It meant that Pettigrew had held back in his spell. Yes, Master. Seeing Voldemort's anger, Pettigrew panicked. He didn't understand how his full force killing curse, which had clearly hit the student and killed him, could now be resurrected. However, now was not the time to investigate. To quell Voldemort's anger, He immediately raised his wand again, intending to cast another killing curse. Avada. Chapter 434 I will be back. Disarm you. Before Pettigrew could even cast his killing curse, George had already successfully cast it without a wand. Stun. A second spell followed, instantly knocking Pettigrew to the ground. If this were the Harry Potter world where his first clone resided, he wouldn't be using the disarming charm or the stunning charm, but rather the chain lightning killing curse. Because he didn't know the specifics of this world, nor how deep its waters ran, he felt it best not to reveal his abilities too much, especially anything inconsistent with his current clone's abilities, lest he attract too much attention. In the Harry Potter world, he knew the most powerful figures were Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and Voldemort. As long as his strength wasn't too much weaker than theirs, he could be as reckless as he wanted. But in an unknown new world, it was better to be cautious until he understood it. If this world contained beings who could kill him with a single slap, then being too conspicuous now wouldn't be a good thing. Let's continue. Back then, after instructing Pettigrew, Voldemort turned to Harry and resumed the speech that had been interrupted. He'd barely uttered a few words when the battle was over, though the outcome was completely opposite to his expectations. Wand, come. Summoning Goldbubby's original wand, George's body crackled with electricity as he grabbed the unconscious Pettigrew and appeared behind Voldemort at incredible speed. Before Voldemort could react, he compressed 2 billion volts of electricity into Voldemort's body through his fingertips. Voldemort was one of the most powerful wizards, possessing immense magical and spiritual power, proficient in various forms of dark magic, and even capable of reshaping his body and resurrecting the dead. Therefore, George's attack was swift, precise, and ruthless, showing no mercy. Having just regained his physical form, Voldemort was struck by the 2 billion volts of electricity, his eyes rolling back, his body throbbing with an intense, agonizing shock. His attention was entirely focused on Harley Quinn. He hadn't expected George to launch a close-range sneak attack, especially with such speed and such a method. Stop the spell. Breaking the spell binding Harley, George summoned the Goblet of Fire, which had been crafted into a portkey. Using the portkey's power, he vanished from the graveyard with Voldemort, Harley, and Pettigrew. The masked dark wizards, Voldemort's former Death Eaters, survivors of the Wizarding Wars, and some high-ranking officials in the Ministry of Magic, looked at each other, unsure what to do. Were they loyal to Voldemort? Yes, but mostly because of Voldemort's power and influence, and the benefits he offered them. They weren't truly loyal. The truly loyal Death Eaters had either died in the Wizarding Wars or imprisoned in Azkaban. If they were truly loyal, they wouldn't have refrained from searching for and helping Voldemort's soul for so many years. Their discovery of Voldemort's resurrection and summon stemmed from their fear of Voldemort and the impending reckoning. And yet, they all wore masks, afraid to reveal their true identities. The incident happened so suddenly, and coupled with their initial hesitation, they were a step too slow to act, resulting in Voldemort and Harley being taken away. Now, they were in a dilemma. Should they stay here or escape immediately? Go. After thinking for a moment, they all had the same answer. Voldemort had been taken back to the Goblet of Fire by the portkey, meaning he would face an attack from Tabor and many other wizards. Judging from how easily he was taken away by the student, his strength was probably not fully recovered from his resurrection, and he was likely doomed. If they stayed here, and Tabor killed Voldemort and used the portkey to come over, none of them would escape. Having figured this out, they immediately apparated and disappeared from their original positions. They're back. Seeing George and Harley reappear at the tournament venue, the teachers, students, wizards, and the contestants' families in the stands immediately stood up and cheered. However, when they saw the addition of Peter Pettigrew and a noseless Voldemort, they were stunned. Headmaster, it's Voldemort. Voldemort has come back to life. He's come back to life. George released the electric shocks he was giving Voldemort, pulled Harley back quickly, and then shouted at the top of his lungs towards Tabor and the others in the stands. Hearing Voldemort's name, most of the wizards present trembled in fear, their faces showing terror. Fortunately, Tabor reacted quickly, immediately confirming that the noseless figure was Voldemort, and drew his wand to attack him. The deans and professors, including Victor, reacted just as quickly, following suit as the headmaster attacked, along with the Aurors and higher-ranking officials from the Ministry of Magic maintaining order. The newly resurrected Voldemort, having just recovered from the electric shocks with his powerful magic, had no time to defend himself or escape before being overwhelmed by a barrage of attack spells. His reconstructed body disintegrated on the spot, and his soul vanished as a wisp of black smoke. "Ah, I'll be back," an angry roar echoed throughout the arena, sending shivers down the spines of the wizards present. "Dabeo, how are you? Are you hurt anywhere?" A middle-aged, overweight man in his 40s stumbled down from the audience, anxiously pulling George up. This man was none other than his doppelganger's father, Jin Guoking. To be honest, it was the first time his doppelganger had parents alive, and he was quite unaccustomed to it. However, he wasn't an ordinary person, and he quickly adjusted, mimicking Jin Yuan's way of speaking from his memories, his face showing lingering fear. "Father, don't worry, I'm fine." Now that he had this guy's body, calling him father was only natural. Besides, it was better to integrate into this world as his doppelganger before figuring out the situation. Let him run. He probably won't pose much of a threat in the short term. Turning his head, he saw Voldemort's soul escape, but George didn't chase after him. To him, Voldemort was just a minor character. After escaping this time, he would probably have to hide in the forest for several years to recuperate before daring to cause trouble again. He could eliminate this guy once he was familiar with this world. Voldemort was killed, and Pettigrew was captured on the spot. George and Harley worked together to recount the events to Headmaster Tabor and the Minister of Magic of this world. The story was simple: Pettigrew's killing curse failed to kill him, and he awoke and bravely rescued Harley. Fearing that Voldemort would summon the Death Eaters to reignite the Wizarding War, they boldly brought Voldemort back as well. Chapter 435: The Strange Man and His Return Home. "Jing, you did a great job, very brave, a true warrior." After explaining the situation, George naturally received praise from all the wizards. If it weren't for his courage, resourcefulness, and considerable magical ability, Harley might have been killed, and Voldemort's resurrection would have remained unknown. As for why Voldemort was brought here by George without resistance, everyone agreed that Voldemort's body hadn't fully adapted after his resurrection using dark magic, and his strength hadn't returned to its peak. After learning the situation from George and Harley, the Aurors immediately used the Goblet of Fire to teleport to the graveyard. Unfortunately, the Death Eaters summoned by Voldemort had already fled, leaving only the pot of potion Voldemort used for his resurrection. Voldemort's resurrection and subsequent death, Peter Pettigrew's survival, and Sirius Black's innocence, these events spread throughout the British wizarding world in the following days, causing a great sensation. George paid no attention to any of this. He spent the last few days in the library reading magic books, but not spell books, but magical history books. The spell books at Flamel House and Hogwarts were essentially the same, with only minor differences in names and similar effects. Therefore, he didn't need to spend extra time studying them, he already knew them. His main focus was on studying the history books of magic, hoping to find useful clues. Modern History of Magic, 21st Century Wizarding Travel Guide, The Threat of Modern High Technology to Wizards. A week later, George sat in the library, putting down his spellbook and muttering, "It's definitely different." After a week in the library, he finally had some understanding of this new world. Compared to the Harry Potter world, where every country has a ministry of magic and supernatural powers are held by wizards with no other schools of thought, this world was much more complex. While most European countries were indeed populated by wizards using magic, the power systems on the other continents varied. In the Americas, for example, most were superhumans and experimental cyborgs, along with some special mutants. Asia was even more complex. Japan had ninjas, and China had key cultivators. The specifics weren't detailed, only general introductions. In any case, throughout the world, whether they are magicians, superpowered individuals, experimental subjects, or key cultivators, they all have one unified name: outcasts. That's roughly how it is for now. Whether there are even more powerful beings like gods or immortals is uncertain, as the records in the magic books are ambiguous. Maybe I should go back to China and take a look. After thinking carefully for a moment, George had some ideas. Staying at Flamel Academy was pointless. His first clone had already graduated early and gone to Hogwarts. Staying here wouldn't yield any new gains. His current identity was Chinese, so returning home was normal. Going to see the so-called key cultivators might yield some good results. Speaking of which, he also knew Taoist magic. He had basically mastered all of the Li family's Taoist techniques, but he didn't know how they differed from the key cultivators of this world. The next day, school was out, and George took the Flamel Express back to his home in London. Before he could even mention returning home to his father, His father brought it up himself. Dabeo. I think you shouldn't go to that school anymore. It's too dangerous. I shouldn't have let you study magic at Flammel College in the first place. I've already talked to your mother. It's not safe abroad. You should transfer back to China to study. When the Flammel College professor came to our house back then, he didn't want his son to study magic. First, it doesn't grant immortality, and second, even if you learn it, you can't use it in front of ordinary people. What's the point? It's better to study hard, get into Cambridge or Harvard, and inherit the company and family business in the future. If his son hadn't insisted on going, and if the professor hadn't said that if he didn't study magic, the magic power in his body might be difficult to control and could endanger his life, he wouldn't have agreed. Now that he has already learned to control the magic, and the British wizarding world is obviously not safe, dropping out and becoming an ordinary rich kid is the right thing to do. Okay, George nodded with a smile, which stunned Jin Gulking. He didn't expect his son to agree so easily. He had actually brought this up more than once, but his son had always refused. Father, I was really scared this time. I almost died. I've thought about it for a long time, and you're right, it's safer to go back to China and live as an ordinary person. George blurted out his prepared explanation. Jin Gulking burst into laughter. All right, then pack your things and leave tomorrow. After I finish these last few months, I'll gradually transfer the business back here and develop it domestically. It's good that you didn't notice anything. Watching Jin Gulking make a phone call to contact a mother in this body, George nodded to himself. While talking to Jin Gulking, he had actually used his mental abilities to probe Jin Gulking's thoughts. His purpose was to prevent Jin Gulking, his biological father, from noticing anything amiss and becoming suspicious. He had Jin Beobeo's memories, but he wasn't Jin Beobeo himself. Some things ordinary people couldn't see, but those familiar with him might. Fortunately, Jin Gulking didn't seem to suspect him. That made sense. Although he was assigned to Jin Gulking, he spent most of his time studying at Flammel College, returning home at most twice a year, sometimes only once. Jin Gulking was busy with company affairs, so even when he returned, they weren't together every day, and they weren't really that familiar with each other. He was also in his growth period, so personality changes were normal. A normal person wouldn't suspect their child's soul had been replaced just because they noticed some unusual changes. Once he returned to China, there was even less to worry about. His mother and sister knew him less than his father, Jin Gulking. The last time they met was 2 years ago when his mother brought his sister to London for a trip. Both parents were career-oriented, focusing most of their energy on their work, leaving their children mostly in the care of nannies. It was only in the last 2 years, as they approached 50, that they started paying more attention to their family and children. Even if they had suspicions, it wouldn't matter, he could simply modify his memories. He would give extra care to all the newly created clones who had family and friends, as a reward for gaining the body. But the premise was that they couldn't pose a threat to him. He had already figured this out when he created his first clone. However, his previous clones didn't have this concern. In the previous Li family, he was the patriarch, so dealing with it was much simpler. Chapter 436 Bayun Temple. Dabeo, over here. He'd barely gotten off the plane when he spotted a short-haired, red-skirted, maturely sexy woman at the arrivals area. This was none other than his older sister, Jin Yuaniten, the woman who is now his clone. Jin Yuaniten, 26 years old, a graduate of Tsinghua University, was currently helping her mother manage the family business. She was an ordinary person with both high intelligence and emotional intelligence. In this world, both wizards and key cultivators needed aptitude. Wizards refer to it as wizard bloodline. Without it, there was no magic power, and without magic power, learning magic was useless. The same applied to key cultivators. Without the aptitude for key cultivation, no method could produce key. Here, key and magic power were the same energy, just different names. He was the only one in his family with the aptitude, the rest were just ordinary people, and apart from his father, no one knew he was a wizard or knew magic. His parents had barely communicated since their divorce, and if it weren't for his return to China, they probably wouldn't have spoken at all. Jin Yuaniten, rarely seeing her mother and sister, felt it unnecessary to let them know things unrelated to ordinary people, and also worried that her mother and sister would be afraid of him because of his wizard identity. Therefore, she always disguised herself as an ordinary person. Sister, George approached, pulling his suitcase, a perfectly timed smile on his face. Jin Yuan looked her brother up and down, patted his shoulder, and laughed. 2 years apart, you've grown taller than me. 2 years ago, when she saw her brother, he was a shy 15-year-old boy. But now, at first glance, it was hard to associate him with a boy, just 2 years older, and the change was so significant. Height was secondary, his face still clearly showed his youthful innocence, but it was his demeanor that truly stood out. Having worked with her mother at the company for years, she had seen all sorts of people, and the way her brother approached made it hard to believe he was 17. Sister is even more beautiful now, George smiled. Jin Yuan was definitely considered very beautiful among ordinary people. Wealthy families have always paired up beautiful women and handsome men, so their descendants naturally wouldn't be lacking in appearance. She was a pampered young lady from a wealthy family. Her temperament, speech, and knowledge were all greatly enhanced, making her stand out from the crowd among ordinary people. Of course, that was only among ordinary people. Compared to the elves of Middle-earth, or someone like Lothane, she couldn't compare. But perhaps because he had seen so many elves, he was somewhat immune to the beauty of women. You have such a sweet tongue, looks like you've been charming many girls at school. Hearing her younger brother praise her beauty, Jin Yuan giggled. Mom has to go on a business trip and won't be back for a few days. I'll take you sightseeing these few days and let you eat some good food. You probably can't find anything good to eat in London. It's alright, don't forget, Dad hired a chef to cook Chinese food at home. You know, Lao Wang's cooking skills are just average in China, but the places I take you to eat are truly authentic. The two walked and chatted, quickly becoming familiar with each other. Jin Yuan was clearly a social butterfly, her mouth churning out topics like a machine gun, and George cooperated by answering them, maintaining a very pleasant atmosphere. By the way, I'll take you to meet some friends tonight. Since Dad's planning to move the business back to China, you'll definitely be dealing with them in the future. A pink luxury sports car sped along the elevated highway. George shook his head after hearing Jin Yuan's words. Forget it, I don't like that kind of dealing, and I don't plan to inherit the family business. I heard there's a Baiyun temple nearby. I'd like to visit it tomorrow. I'm quite interested in the Taoist sects in China. The original Jin Bao was a wizard whose dream after graduation was to join the national Quidditch team and play Quidditch. He had no intention of inheriting the family business. So his statement wasn't particularly surprising. As for wanting to visit Baiyun Temple, the magic books he'd been searching through contained very little description of the Chinese cultivation world, only mentioning that most key practitioners originated from Taoist temples. The most famous Taoist temple in Beijing was Baiyun Temple, the ancestral home of the Quanzhen Longmen school of Taoism, renowned as the #1 Quanzhen temple. Perhaps visiting there would allow him to meet Chinese key practitioners and learn about the domestic cultivation system. Taoist temple, little brother, you absolutely mustn't follow in the footsteps of one of my classmates. If you went to a Taoist temple to become a nun, Dad would be furious. He's counting on you to inherit the family business. Hearing George's words, Jin Yuan immediately perked up. George said directly, well, that's because of you. I really have no interest in business, and I won't inherit the family business in the future. I said that 2 years ago. Forget it, Mom's company is enough for me. Jin Yuan waved her hand. Although wealthy families are always scheming against each other, she had never actually set her sights on her father's company. She still had that much backbone. As a true prodigy who entered Tsinghua University based on her own merit, she was different from those rich kids who just loafed around. She had her own pride and wanted to create wealth through her own abilities, not just by inheriting the family business. What's the story with that classmate of yours who went to a Taoist temple to become a nun? George's eyes lit up, and he became somewhat interested in the classmate Jin Yuan had just mentioned. Jin Yuan's lips curled up slightly. That guy's name is Wang Yi, the third son of Wang Weiguo from Zhonghe Group. He's kind of my childhood friend, a very smart and capable guy. He does everything very well, but he seems indifferent to everything. He got into Tsinghua University based on his own merit, just like me, but I have to admit, he got in much easier than me. But I don't know if he lost his mind, because in his 3rd year at Tsinghua, he suddenly dropped out and went to Wudang Mountain to become a Taoist priest. He hasn't come back since. Sister, do you like him? Even without actively using her mental abilities, Jin Yuan's expression at this moment was enough to guess. Jin Yuan blushed instantly. What nonsense are you talking about? How could a future strong woman as ambitious as me like that lazy, unambitious guy As if afraid George would continue the topic, she quickly said, Bayun Temple, right. I'll take you there tomorrow. Speaking of which, I know Master Liu there. My mom donated a lot of money to the temple to win over a big client of a Taoist sect. Are there any interesting rumors about Bayun Temple? What rumors? Like magic or something? I'm telling you, little brother, what era are we living in? You still believe in this stuff? Even Master Liu and the others say we should believe in science. I'm just asking out of curiosity. After several probes, George discovered that Jin Yuan, this rich second generation from the upper class, seemed genuinely unaware of the existence of key practitioners. What does this mean? It means that this aspect is well hidden in China. Even most of the wealthy and high-ranking people are unaware of their existence. Chapter 437 Good Guys, Bad Guys, and the Imperial Court. They're definitely not normal people. The next day, at Bayun Temple, George looked at the Taoist priests and muttered to himself. His senses told him that many of these priests possessed considerable energy, comparable to the magical power of adult wizards in London. In other words, he was right. Bayun Temple was indeed no ordinary temple, and it truly housed legitimate key cultivators. Are you Mr. Jin? Just as George was observing the priests, one of the young priests' eyes lit up when he saw him, and he strode over. Yes, it's me. And you are? George looked puzzled. The young man took out his phone, which displayed a photo of George. My name is Wang Ming. Miss Jin called my senior brother this morning. He asked me to show you around Bayun Temple. You can ask me any questions. Oh, I see. Thank you, Master Wang. George immediately understood when he saw the photo. It turned out that Jin Yuan had originally planned to show him around Bayun Temple, but something came up at work, so he had to come alone. However, it seemed Jin Yuan was worried he wouldn't enjoy his visit, so she called an acquaintance at Bayun Temple and arranged a guide for him. Having a Taoist priest from Bayun Temple as a guide was definitely professional. I dare not accept the title of master. My senior brother would kick me if he knew. I'm probably not much older than you. Just call me Wang Ming, or Master Wang. It's fine. Wang Ming quickly waved his hand and laughed. Under the guidance of Wang Ming, this genuine Bayun Temple Taoist, George thoroughly toured the entire temple, learning a great deal about its history and related culture. However, Wang Ming's explanations didn't mention a single thing about key refiners. Master Wang, you seem to know so much about the temple's history. You must have been at Bayun Temple for quite some time, George said after the tour, buying 2 bottles of water and finding a less crowded spot to start a conversation. Wang Ming, oblivious to the commotion, chuckled and remarked, it's been quite a while indeed. I entered Bayun Temple when I was 7, and it's been a full 15 years now. 15 years? Have you learned any magic or anything like that? George continued to ask. Wang Ming hesitated for a moment, then immediately shook his head. Mr. Jin, you must have watched too many novels and TV shows. There's no such thing as magic in this world. The temple has plenty of Taoist scriptures, but they're all perfectly normal. You can find them online. However, I have learned some martial arts for strengthening the body. If you want to learn, I can teach you a few moves. Although Jin Bao was an ordinary person, his mother had amassed a considerable fortune for the temple. His senior brother intended to cultivate a good relationship and treat him well. Fundamental sect techniques like internal alchemy and the emergence of the Yang spirit were naturally off limits, even to ordinary people. But teaching a few health-strengthening exercises was no problem. His senior brother often participated in variety shows, teaching people health-preserving exercises like the 8 pieces of brocade and Vajragyan on television. This era wasn't like before, when everyone stayed in the temple, practicing asceticism and detached from worldly affairs. Even the celestial master of Longhu Mountain, the undisputed #1 expert in the cultivation world, has to cooperate with the Culture and Tourism Bureau to frequently appear in public and give interviews. Master Wang, to tell you the truth, I am also an extraordinary person, but I studied abroad for a long time and just returned to China. I want to understand what the situation is like for extraordinary people here. Seeing that Wang Ming was tight-lipped, George stopped beating around the bush and went straight to the point. Since he was certain that the Taoist priests of Bayun Temple were not ordinary people, being direct might be more effective. Extraordinary person? What extraordinary person? Hearing George's words, Wang Ming visibly froze for a moment, but still didn't budge. George reached out and beckoned to the mineral water bottle in Wang Ming's hand. Fly the bottle, The bottle immediately flew out of Wang Ming's hand and into George's hand. Master Wang, I'm not lying to you, and I'm not here to provoke you. I'm just unfamiliar with the situation in China and want to learn about it, and maybe make some friends. George handed the bottle back to Wang Ming. Wang Ming snatched the bottle away. You should have said so earlier. Stop beating around the bush. It's not a big deal. After confirming that George was indeed an extraordinary being, Wang Ming's expression visibly relaxed. For them, dealing with extraordinary beings was much easier than dealing with ordinary people. With ordinary people, one had to be careful with their words and couldn't display abilities beyond normal comprehension. It seemed simple, but it was very troublesome. If they accidentally revealed their secret and caused a commotion, not only would their sect elders come after them, but the relevant authorities wouldn't let them off the hook either. On the other hand, with extraordinary beings, even if they fought to the death, as long as ordinary people weren't involved, it was a matter between the extraordinary beings themselves. I wasn't sure before, but after looking around, I'm fairly certain now, George explained with a smile. Wang Ming nodded understandingly. That's true. When you're unsure if someone is an extraordinary person, you do need to be careful. Since you are an extraordinary person, and your family has donated a lot of money to our temple, feel free to ask me anything you want to know. As long as it doesn't involve any of our sect's secrets, I can answer your questions. Then thank you very much, Master Wang. George cupped his hands in a Taoist fist salute to Wang Ming, and then began to slowly talk about the general situation of key practitioners in China. Things went more smoothly than he had expected. Perhaps due to the impact of modern culture and the information overload of the internet age, young Taoists like Wang Ming didn't have many conservative ideas and were very open to conversation. Through his communication with Wang Ming, he also gained a clearer understanding of the situation of key practitioners in China. According to his understanding, the forces of key practitioners in China are mainly divided into three categories. In the martial arts novels he had read in his previous life, these would be the righteous faction, the villains, and the imperial court. There are many righteous factions, including the great sects that have been passed down from ancient times to the present, such as the Celestial Master's Mansion, Baiyun Temple, Shaolin, Tangclan, Wudang Sect, and Wuhao Sect. There are also family-based forces, such as the Lu family, the Wang family, and the Gao family. And emerging forces, like the Xianxia Society, which is a company-type organization. In short, if you were to go into detail, there are many, many more. Each sect has its own unique cultivation methods and abilities. This made him very happy, because it meant he could learn a lot of new things. There was only one villainous force, Guangxing, a 1,000-year-old evil sect, founded by Yang Zhu, one of the 100 schools of thought during the Warring States period. It emphasized preserving one's true nature and not being burdened by material possessions. Most of its members were independent cultivators and outcasts from various sects. Because anyone claiming to be from Guangxing was considered Guangxing, its membership was too diverse, leading to its rejection and resistance from all righteous sects. There was even a rule among the righteous sects that they could kill any Guangxing member without bearing any responsibility. Chapter 438. Let's have a friendly spar. While it's true that all members of the Guangxing sect are bad, that's not entirely true. He felt it was like the demonic sects in many martial arts novels. Not all were evil, many were passionate and admirable. Similarly, were all the righteous sects good? Of course not. Internal and external power struggles were inevitable among the various sects. The reason an organization like Guangxing had survived for 1,000 years was probably partly because the righteous sects didn't want them all to perish, as that would force them to fight amongst themselves. Finally, there was the imperial court, the largest of the three major powers. The government had a special organization for dealing with superhumans called Nadu Tong, ostensibly the largest courier company in the country. It was actually a special unit established by the government to control superhumans and protect ordinary people. All its members were superhumans. Unlike in other countries, such as Europe, where governments generally had no control over wizards, the Ministry of Magic was responsible for that. In the Americas, a company formed by a group of wealthy individuals controlled most of the superhumans, and even the government. Only domestically, the government holds complete control. At least in general, no sect dares to oppose Nadu Tong. Even the Guangxing sect, which dares to laugh as they slaughter superhumans from various sects, wouldn't dare to casually attack ordinary people. Of course, Nadu Tong's role in the superhuman world is mainly to restrain them, aiming to maintain balance and stability and ensure that ordinary people don't widely perceive the existence of superhumans. Therefore, any person or force that disrupts the balance, regardless of whether they are righteous or evil, must be eliminated. It doesn't forcibly interfere in the internal affairs of superhumans. Major internal matters are generally resolved through the 10 Elders meeting. The so-called 10 Elders are the 10 most authoritative and powerful superhumans on the righteous side. This information wasn't all given to him by Wang Ming. Wang Ming only gave him a general overview and recommended a forum where superhumans gathered domestically. By quickly browsing the posts on the forum and piecing together these conclusions, he arrived at a general idea. Anyway, that's roughly it. By the way, Mr. Jin, are you a naturally gifted or acquired superhuman? Wang Ming asked George with some curiosity at the end of the conversation. George thought for a moment. I'd say it's acquired. There are innate and acquired superhumans. Innate superhumans are born with a certain ability, while acquired superhumans need specific techniques to use it. In his understanding, it's like some wizards are born with the ability to manipulate thoughts, while others need to learn mind manipulation spells to cast them. But innate isn't necessarily stronger than acquired, it depends on the person. A strong person, regardless of whether their ability is innate or acquired through cultivation, will ultimately be strong. Based on his current clone situation, he's definitely an acquired superhuman, able to cast spells by learning magic at school. In reality, he possesses both innate and acquired abilities. Innate ones include using magnetism to control metal and generate electricity, as well as telepathy. Acquired ones are the various spells he learned in different worlds. This is the first time I've seen a superhuman from abroad. If there's a chance, let's spar. Wang Ming looked at the bottle in his hand, recalling George's ability to make the bottle fly back to his hand, hesitated for a moment, but couldn't help speaking up. If you're not willing, then forget it. I was just saying, sparring is common among people with good relationships, but they'd only just met today, and he was worried about misunderstandings. However, he was genuinely curious about the methods of foreign superhumans. Of course. I'd love to. I'm also very interested in learning about the methods of domestic superhumans. How could George refuse Wang Ming's request? Wang Ming was curious about the abilities of foreign superhumans, but he was even more curious about the techniques of the various sects in China, especially since Baiyun Temple was one of the most famous Taoist sects. Alright, come with me. But no matter who wins or loses, you can't tell my senior brother about this. Seeing George agree, Wang Ming immediately pulled George through a maze of turns and arrived at a small grove behind Baiyun Temple where tourists were not allowed to enter. This is where I often practice. At this time of year, few people should come here. In the open space, the two took their positions, and Wang Ming performed a Taoist fist and palm salute. Our Baiyun Temple is different from other Taoist sects. We reject other strange and frivolous techniques, focusing all our energy on nurturing and cultivating our spirit and life force. So, Mr. Jin, you'd better be careful later. Thank you for the reminder, Taoist master. George followed Wang Ming's example and performed the fist and palm salute as well. After spending half a day together, he found Wang Ming to be a decent Taoist, not the kind of person with many ulterior motives. His initiative to spar was genuinely out of interest in the abilities of foreign supernatural beings, not to show off. He even reminded him to be careful not to injure him during the spar. However, if this were an ordinary foreign wizard, he wouldn't understand what cultivating both spirit and life force meant. He had studied the Li family's Taoist arts, possessed Li Zhuan's memories, and was considered a Taoist master from that world, so he naturally understood what Wang Ming meant. Wang Ming was saying that their sect focused all their energy on cultivating the body and soul, without various Taoist spells. Therefore, his physical body and soul would be very powerful, which also meant he would be very strong in close combat. Sure enough, after the sparring began, Wang Ming's body was immediately enveloped by the ki within him, and then he rushed towards him at an extremely fast speed. That speed is not bad. George drew his wand and cast a full body binding spell. Petrify them all. This sparring was mainly to observe the techniques of Baiyun Temple, not to defeat Wang Ming immediately. So he naturally wouldn't go all out, but would test him little by little. He would start with the level of a normal adult wizard, and then gradually increase the intensity, so that he could get a glimpse of the general level of the superhumans in the country. This won't hit my little path. Facing the incoming magical beam, Wang Ming didn't take it head-on, but easily dodged it with a swift movement, and then continued to strike George with a palm. Obstacles against melee enemies. The best method for a normal adult wizard is the obstacle spell, because it can reduce the opponent's movement speed and increase the hit rate of his own magic. Petrify them all. Following the obstacle spell was the full body binding spell. This time, however, Wang Ming was caught off guard by the sudden slowing effect of the obstruction charm and was successfully hit by the body binding curse. These Western spells are quite interesting. Despite being bound, Wang Ming didn't panic. Instead, he let out a roar and forcefully broke free of the body binding curse with his bare hands. Impressive magic resistance. I wonder how much physical resistance he has. George's eyes lit up at the sight. Wang Ming's ability to break free of the body binding curse wasn't just due to brute force, but also to the resistance of the magical effects from the energy throughout his body. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, The God of Emerging Yang vs. the Guardian God. Mr. Jin, I'm here. After breaking free of the binding spells, Wang Ming struck George in the stomach with a palm. George, while retreating, waved his wand again. Arrows never miss. 6 arrows appeared out of thin air and shot towards Wang Ming. Seeing this, Wang Ming immediately changed his strike to a grab, catching all 6 arrows in his hand. I don't know the golden light spell of Longhu Mountain. Looks like his physical resistance isn't high. George immediately made a judgment. The White Cloud Temple's techniques can enhance the strength of the physical body and soul, providing good resistance to spells, but after all, it's still a mortal body, unable to withstand sharp arrows, let alone bullets. However, this might be due to Wang Ming's insufficient cultivation. His senior brother and master might be able to do it. Stun. Taking advantage of Wang Ming catching the arrows with his bare hands, George cast a stun spell to continue testing. The stun spell targets the mind and indirectly affects the soul. He wanted to see if Wang Ming's techniques could withstand the enhancement to his soul. So far, all the magic he's used, and the intensity of that magic, has been reduced to the level of a normal adult wizard. However, normal adult wizards rarely fight and might not be able to use their magic as flexibly as he does. Struck by the stunning curse, Wang Ming's eyes rolled back, and just as he was about to lose consciousness, he suddenly slammed his right fist into his left palm, letting out a soft shout and instantly regaining his senses. Mr. Jin's strength is not bad. I'll have to use my full strength now. Having regained his senses, Wang Ming pushed off with his right foot, instantly doubling his movement speed, even negating the effect of the obstruction curse. It turned out that he hadn't used his full strength earlier, fearing he might hurt George. Ironclad, however, just as Wang Ming's palm was about to strike George's abdomen, George activated the ironclad curse in time. At this speed, an average adult wizard would probably have a hard time dealing with it. You'd need an aura's level. Using a magical shield to block Wang Ming's attack, George secretly compared the two. A normal adult wizard only has a few spells available for combat and wouldn't use the unforgivable curse. Even if they did, it would be difficult to hit Wang Ming. Once Wang Ming gets close, wizards whose melee abilities are not much different from ordinary people are basically finished. Only wizards of our caliber can block with the armor charm in time. Even among the Ministry of Magic's clerical wizards, few can master the armor charm, a spell of such difficulty. Break. Seeing that a defensive shield had blocked his attack, Wang Ming no longer held back, his hands enveloped in a large amount of qi, and he began to strike the shield with a series of powerful blows. The qi-infused fist struck the shield with tremendous force. George thought that if those fists hit concrete, they would probably create a crater with each punch. If it were just a simple physical attack, it wouldn't break the armor charm's defense, but with the added qi from the fists, the armor charm was starting to crumble. It actually cracked. Under Wang Ming's relentless bombardment, the armor charm's defense, which was generally at the aura level, began to crack, and then shattered. Full speed back, the moment the ironclad charm shattered. George immediately used the knockback charm to push Wang Ming back several steps, then used apparition to teleport away from Wang Ming. Most elite aurors can use apparition to assist in combat, not just for traveling. A technique similar to teleportation. Wang Ming looked at George using teleportation to create distance, his face showing surprise. Teleportation, a Taoist method of instantaneous movement, is now almost lost. although there are still a few masters in Taoism who can use talismans to move through space. However, among innate extraordinary individuals, there are those who have awakened abilities similar to teleportation, such as Feng Xian of the World Society, who is said to be very strong. This is troublesome. We definitely can't catch up, we can only take the hits. Wang Ming scratched his head, a troubled look on his face. After hesitating for a moment, he shouted to George, Mr. Jin, I'm about to unleash my ultimate move. This is the strongest technique from our Bayun Temple, primarily targeting the soul. I've only just mastered it. If you can't withstand it, just admit defeat. As he spoke, his body suddenly froze, his eyes glazed over, and his soul flew directly out of his body, hurtling towards George at several times the speed of his physical form. So astral projection, to actually allow the soul to leave the body to fight, this trip was truly worthwhile. Seeing Wang Ming's soul leave his body, George was more delighted than surprised, because even he couldn't do this now. He knew magic that attacked the soul, magic that forcibly extracted the soul from another's body, and magic that sealed another's soul. But the method of letting his soul leave his body and then fighting as a soul was something he truly didn't know. Although fighting with his soul wouldn't be as powerful as using his physical body to cast magic, it's still a method. Regardless of whether this method would be effective in certain situations, it at least proves that the White Cloud Temple's techniques can indeed greatly strengthen the soul. Otherwise, to achieve soul astral projection for combat, besides the method itself, a certain level of soul strength is also impossible. What are the benefits of a strong soul? Too many to count. For him, a stronger soul also means stronger mental power, and stronger mental power means stronger psychic abilities. His current psychic ability, combined with mind control, is only enough for mind reading, searching, and copying memories. He can't yet do what Professor X did at his peak, directly immobilizing a large group of people and controlling their bodies with his psychic abilities. If he could obtain the White Cloud Temple's techniques, perhaps he could continuously strengthen his soul through them, eventually perhaps even controlling an entire planet's population instantly without needing a brainwave amplifier. Patriot, with a flick of his wand, George cast the Patronus charm. He had many methods for dealing with souls, but none of them were suitable for his current situation, such as the soul sealing technique he learned in the world of mage apprentices. From a wizard's perspective, there were only two ways to deal with this kind of soul attack. One was the killing curse, which would instantly obliterate Wang Ming's soul if it hit. However, Wang Ming in his soul form could fly, moving several times faster than his physical body, making it impossible to hide him normally. Besides, even if he could hide him, he couldn't use it. This was a friendly spar, not a fight. The other was the Patronus charm. The Patronus is the physical manifestation of a wizard's spiritual power and is the strongest protective magic, capable of defending against soul attacks. However, in the wizarding world, the Patronus charm was a spell that only a very few wizards with a righteous heart could use. Therefore, if Wang Ming's strength were in the wizarding world, only elite wizards would have a chance of fighting him. Chapter 440 Participating in the Luotian Grand Ceremony. Looks like I'll have quite a few gains in this world, George thought to himself as he released his guardian panda to block Wang Ming's soul attack. This was only the first Taoist temple, and he'd already encountered a helpful cultivation technique. He believed the other sects wouldn't be too bad either. What is this thing, panda? Aren't you a native of Beijing? Wang Ming was somewhat speechless, finding his attacks always blocked by the panda's plump body. No matter how much he punched and kicked, the panda stood there like a cat unaffected. Beijingers also like Sichuan pandas. George smiled. Master Wang, let's stop here. You can't break my guardian spirit, and I can't attack your physical form while using my guardian spirit. It's a draw. Alright, a draw then. Wang Ming's soul returned to his body, and he opened his eyes and walked towards George. I never expected there would be magic abroad that could resist my yang spirit. There really aren't to be underestimated, you brat. Now you know what it means to be outmatched. Don't think that just because you're a top student, you can neglect your cultivation. Just then, a middle-aged Taoist with a large beard suddenly appeared behind Wang Ming. Wang Ming jumped up in fright, then chuckled, Senior brother, I've been diligently cultivating. Why are you here? I noticed you'd unleashed your yang spirit, so naturally I had to come and see. The middle-aged Taoist struck Wang Ming on the head, knocking him to the ground. You just learned to unleash your yang spirit and you dare to show it off? If they weren't only defending and not attacking, you would have been utterly destroyed. Greetings, Master Liu. George retracted his guardian spirit, apparated to the middle-aged Taoist, and bowed respectfully. The moment Wang Ming unleashed his Yang spirit, the middle-aged Taoist arrived, his speed far surpassing Wang Ming's. Based on the information gleaned from his previous conversation with Wang Ming, the middle-aged Taoist priest who arrived should be Liu Xinggang, Wang Ming's senior brother who was instructing him in cultivation on behalf of their master. Master, you flatter me. The guardian spirit is primarily for defense, it has almost no offensive capabilities, so it can only maintain an undefeated state and cannot harm Master Wang's Yang spirit. A normal guardian spirit spell mainly targets soul-devouring monsters and can also be used for long-distance communication, but it indeed has little offensive power. However, his is different. His own strength far surpasses that of a normal wizard, and he has also modified the guardian spirit spell. With just a slight thought, the guardian spirit can condense into power, let alone attacking souls, it can even shatter stone. Mr. Jin, there's no need for such formality. I didn't expect Miss Jin's brother to also be an extraordinary being. Liu Xinggang turned to look at George, a hint of surprise on his face. George smiled. Besides my father, no one else in my family knows I'm an extraordinary being, so I'm asking Master to help keep it a secret. Understandable. Liu Xinggang nodded. This is quite common among extraordinary beings. Although there's a powerful organization overseeing things, the world of superhumans is definitely much more dangerous than that of ordinary people, and no one wants their family to get involved. So, ignorance is bliss. Senior brother, we're just sparring, nothing else. You still have to lecture your junior brothers, so don't waste time here. Wang Ming got up from the ground, rubbing his head helplessly. Take good care of Mr. Jin, and don't cause any more trouble, or you'll be punished by copying the Dao De Jing 50 times tonight. Liu Xinggang snorted coldly, clasped his hands in a fist salute to George again, and then leisurely left. In this era, even superhumans have to be legal and compliant when making money. But many Taoist priests aren't good at making money, so it's necessary to befriend some big businessmen. He had his junior brother Wang Ming host Jin Bao, this rich second generation, today because he wanted Wang Ming to make good connections and bring considerable income to the Taoist temple in the future. Now that Jin Bao is a superhuman, it's even better. So he didn't hold Wang Ming's Yang Shen matter against him anymore. Mr. Jin, your skills are impressive. Have you considered participating in the Luotian Grand Ceremony in a week? The Luotian Grand Ceremony? George looked puzzled. He had indeed seen many people mention it while browsing the forums, but he hadn't had time to look into it closely. Yes, this year's Luotian Grand Ceremony is different from previous ones. Old Master Lu Jin of the Lu family has offered the Tongshan Talisman as the prize for the champion. Mentioning the Luotian Grand Ceremony, Wang Ming immediately perked up. What is the Tongshan Talisman? George asked curiously. Wang Ming's eyes lit up immediately. The Tongshan Talisman. I heard my master say it's the pinnacle of talismanic arts. No need to set up an altar, no need to circulate ki, no need for any prior preparation. Even a shanking master specializing in talismans would need several hours to complete a talisman, but he can do it effortlessly. Moreover, he can draw a large number of talismans in a very short time. That's the Tongshan Talisman, so, it's something amazing. I want to try it too. Seeing Wang Ming's enthusiasm, George became very interested. In the previous conversation, Wang Ming had looked down on the kind of talismanic arts that involved setting up stalls and performing rituals, believing that his Baiyun temple's focus on cultivating one's nature and destiny was the true path. But when talking about the Tongshan Talisman, his eyes lit up. This could only mean that the Tongshan Talisman was indeed no ordinary talismanic art. We'll go together then. I'll represent our Baiyun temple in the competition. But Master said that with my strength, I have absolutely no chance of getting first place and the Tongshan Talisman. I'll just go to broaden my horizons and see the strength of the younger generation of various sects. Wang Ming patted George on the shoulder. Don't have too high hopes either. Just treat it as an opportunity to learn. Like me, he felt that Jin Bao's strength was about the same as his, so it was impossible for him to get first place. He invited Jin Bao because he thought Jin Bao was a good person, and it would be too boring for him to go alone. Besides, he wasn't stupid and understood his senior brother's meaning. It just so happened that Jin Bao had just returned to China and wanted to learn about the situation of supernatural beings in China. This trip would definitely be an eye-opener. Okay, how do I register? George nodded without hesitation and agreed, putting aside the Tongshan talisman. Since so many supernatural beings from various sects were participating in the Luotian Grand Ceremony, he could go and learn about the magic of supernatural beings in China. Then he could choose the ones that interested him and find a way to get them. Otherwise, like Bayun Temple, going door to door to test everyone would take forever. No need to register now. Anyone under 30 years old with extraordinary abilities can participate. You can register with us when we get there. Thank you very much, Master Wang. George gave a fist and palm salute. Wang Ming waved his hand. No need for such formalities. We get along quite well. You're also with extraordinary abilities, so you can call me Old Wang in private, and I'll call you Old Jin. Alright, George smiled. Chapter 441 8 Extraordinary Skills. The 8 extraordinary techniques: key body source flow, spirit binding and commanding, and the heavenly talisman. It seems this Luotian Grand Ceremony is truly extraordinary. That evening, George carefully browsed through all the posts about the Luotian Grand Ceremony, learning a great deal of information. Currently, the most recognized superhuman in the country is the old celestial master of Longhu Mountain. Just how strong is he? Nobody really knows, only that he's incredibly powerful. The Luotian Grand Ceremony was originally a grand event for Longhu Mountain to select the successor to the Celestial Master. So, although it's a grand event for the superhuman world, it doesn't really concern most people. They just watch the spectacle. But this time is different. Because the old Celestial Master added a college student named Zhang Julin to the list of successors. Zhang Julin wasn't famous before, he only suddenly became popular in recent months, supposedly as the successor to one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, key body source flow. The 8 extraordinary techniques are said to be 8 unique skills that suddenly appeared decades ago, each possessing power far exceeding other techniques of its kind, representing the pinnacle of their respective categories. Upon its appearance, it was immediately fought over by various sects, seemingly causing quite a stir, though the specifics remain unclear. All that is known is that the Feng family, possessing one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, the spirit binding technique, is the founder of the current world society and one of the 10 elders, one of the most powerful forces in the domestic supernatural world. Therefore, Zhang Julin, the inheritor of the key body source flow, naturally became a coveted prize. Whoever could control Zhang Julin would obtain the key body source flow. This reminded him of the Lin family and the smiling, proud wanderer, who were tragically wiped out because of a single copy of the evil repelling sword manual. It was a case of a common man is innocent, but possessing a treasure is a crime. However, Zhang Julin seemed to have some connection to the Celestial Master's mansion, not only knowing the Golden Light mantra of Longhu Mountain but also the Thunder technique, which only high-level masters could inherit. The old Celestial Master wanted to protect him, so he brought him into the Celestial Master candidate list. If Zhang Julin truly became the Celestial Master's successor, probably no sect would dare to covet the key body source flow. Therefore, in order to obtain the key source flow, several of the other 10 elders worked together to transform the Luotian Grand Ceremony into a competition open to all extraordinary individuals in the world. If the disciples of the other 10 elders could unite to eliminate Zhang Julin, he would be unable to inherit the Celestial Master title, and they would still have a chance to seize the key source flow. However, Lu Jin clearly had an exceptionally good relationship with the Celestial Master of Longhu Mountain. He used the Tongshan talisman as bait to lure all the young talents in the world to participate in the Luotian Grand Ceremony, turning it into a chaotic free-for-all. The disciples of the other 10 elders couldn't unite to deal with Zhang Julin. Crucially, the Tongshan talisman is also one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, theoretically no less powerful than the key source flow. So the disciples of the other 10 elders would inevitably vie for first place. As a result, the interests of the disciples of the other 10 elders were not aligned, making cooperation impossible. In the end, the Luotian Grand Ceremony truly became a competition based on individual ability. This was an open conspiracy, which many people on the forum could see, and the 10 elders were naturally well aware of it, but they still had to accept it. Because they genuinely offered an equivalent 8 extraordinary techniques, what else can you say? I won't be polite with this Tongshan talisman. Closing his phone, George had made up his mind. Since the Tongshan talisman was so highly regarded, it couldn't be bad. If there was a legitimate way to obtain it, he naturally wouldn't let it pass. What he was currently conflicted about was the Bayun Temple's cultivation method. He definitely wanted to obtain the Bayun Temple's method of cultivating Yang spirit and life force. The key was how to obtain it. A few years ago, he would have definitely found an opportunity to defeat Wang Ming and then search his memories to obtain the cultivation method from his mind. Because at that time, he desperately needed power to protect himself, otherwise, he might lose his life. Faced with his own life, as long as it didn't cross his bottom line, he would compromise on many things, at most finding a way to compensate later. But now it's different. The Bayun Temple's cultivation method would be helpful to him, but only as a bonus. Even without it, it wouldn't matter much. Under these circumstances, forcibly searching his memories to obtain it wouldn't be ethical. Besides, Wang Ming was a decent person. This is like when you're starving, you won't care about anything else, even if you have to rob or steal, you'll fill your stomach to save your life first. But when you're only slightly hungry, you won't disregard morality and law to steal or rob. Instead, you'll find a temporary job to earn money and then use the money to buy food. Take it slow, there will be opportunities later. After a moment's thought, he temporarily put aside his plan to directly obtain the cultivation method from Wang Ming's memories. He had only been in this world for a few days, there was no rush. Unless it was an enemy, if possible, he was still willing to obtain what he wanted through equivalent exchange. For example, if he obtained the Tongshan talisman, and after learning it, used it to exchange for the cultivation method of Bayun Temple, would Bayun Temple agree to the exchange? Since the other sects were so eager for the 8 extraordinary techniques, many of them would probably be willing to exchange. This Tongshan talisman cultivation method doesn't just disappear after you learn it. He could trade as many times as he wanted, but he had to specify during the transaction that it couldn't be shared afterward to prevent others from doing the same. Anyway, he didn't care how many people from various sects learned the Tongshan Lu, it posed no threat to him. The key was that he felt even the Tongshan Lu wasn't something everyone could learn, and even if they did, they weren't guaranteed to become experts, it depended on individual aptitude. Look at those sects practicing their own techniques, the cultivation was the same, yet only a very few achieved true mastery, most remaining mediocre. A technique of the Tongshan Lu's level would probably be even harder to learn than the techniques of ordinary sects. Fortunately, he possessed Li Zhuan's memories and had studied many Taoist methods. Although they weren't from the same world, many fundamentals were the same, and the essence of magic was interconnected, so learning it shouldn't be too difficult. And so, a week quickly passed. During this week, he spent most of his time visiting Wang Ming at Bayun Temple, and occasionally accompanied his sister Jin Yuan shopping, getting to know some wealthy second-generation heirs. He'd met this clone's mother a few times, all was in a rush, she was undeniably a strong woman. But he could also sense that she loved this clone, blood is thicker than water. It was just that they didn't spend much time together, so she didn't quite know how to interact with him. These things weren't important to him, he could manage. Old Jin, over here, at the airport, George, carrying his backpack, had just arrived when he saw Wang Ming waving at him, and Liu Xingyang standing behind Wang Ming. Old Wang, Master Liu, you're here even earlier than me, George went up to greet them. He had arrived quite a bit early, but he hadn't expected the two to be there before him. It's all because of this kid. He's been excited since this morning, insisting I'll leave early. Liu Xingyang shook his head helplessly. Chapter 442 The Old Celestial Master of Longhu Mountain. Senior brother, this is my first time traveling so far, my first time on a plane too, Wang Ming chuckled, scratching his head. He was an orphan, taken in by Bayun Temple at the age of 7, and after 15 years of arduous cultivation, this was his first time leaving Beijing for another place. Let's grab something to eat, the plane still has a long way to go, forget it, I just checked, the food at the airport is ridiculously expensive, it's my treat, eat whatever you want, I was just waiting for you to say that. After eating something at the airport, the three boarded a plane bound for Zhuangzi. Around 11 o'clock, they arrived at Shenking Ancient Town in Longhu Mountain, a place teeming with ordinary tourists from all over the country. Tickets are 260 yuan per person, but our Bayun Temple only charges 10 yuan. Although they were attending the Luotian Grand Ceremony as extraordinary individuals, they still had to buy tickets. Looking at the ticket prices for Longhu Mountain and then thinking about their Bayun Temple, Wang Ming felt a huge disparity. No wonder Longhu Mountain is so rich, their tickets are much more expensive than ours, the tourism bureau sets the price, and most of it goes into their pockets. Longhu Mountain doesn't get much? Compared to Longhu Mountain, our Bayun Temple is actually more free. Their front mountain is basically controlled by the Tourism Bureau. Liu Xingyang adjusted his sunglasses and explained. There are advantages and disadvantages, George nodded. Although Bayun Temple's tickets are cheap, precisely because the tickets are cheap, there's not much profit to be made, so the Tourism Bureau doesn't pay much attention. Basically, the entire Bayun Temple is managed by the Taoist priests within the temple, and they have a lot of freedom. But Longhu Mountain is different. The front mountain is managed by the Tourism Bureau, and the real Taoist priests of Longhu Mountain can only cultivate in the back mountain. They only go to the front mountain when there is a special need. It's the old celestial master. Let's go say hello. Not long after they went up the mountain, they saw Zhang Zihui, the current celestial master, taking a photo with the inspecting leaders and making a peace sign in front of the Taoist temple. He is also recognized as the #1 master in the country. As fellow Taoists, Liu Xingyang naturally recognized the old celestial master and immediately led Wang Ming and George over. Actually, it didn't matter whether George came or not, as he wasn't a Taoist. However, he was still very interested in the top master in the country, the old celestial master of Longhu Mountain, and wanted to observe him up close. Liu Xingyang of Bayun Temple greets the old celestial master. Liu Xingyang stepped forward and performed a Taoist fist and palm salute, which Wang Ming and George followed suit. The old celestial master smiled upon seeing Liu Xingyang. So it's Xingyang. How has your master been lately? Master is in good health, eating and sleeping well, Liu Xingyang replied respectfully. Zhang Zihui stroked his snow-white beard. That's good. It seems he can live a few more years. Are these two your disciples? This is my junior brother, Wang Ming. This is one of our friends, a wandering cultivator, who studies foreign magic. Liu Xingyang introduced them one by one. Foreign magic, Zhang Zihui sized up George. Noticing the small wooden stick at George's waist, and immediately understood. You're a wizard, aren't you, old master? You're truly knowledgeable. My father did business in London and was accepted into a wizarding school there, where he studied magic for a few years. George concealed his aura and replied with a smile. It was normal for Zhang Zihui, as the top martial artist in the country and reportedly over 100 years old, to know about foreign wizards. The school in London, is it Flymal College? I visited there during my world travels. How is Headmaster Tabor? Hearing about the London Magic School, Zhang Zihui was lost in memories, and it took him a while to recover before asking George. George hadn't expected Zhang Zihui to know Tabor, but he nodded nonetheless. The headmaster is doing well. He's been researching new sweater knitting techniques lately. Well, that guy really hasn't changed. Next time you go back, if you see him, please tell him he can come visit Longhu Mountain sometime. Zhang Zihui's face showed a touch of emotion. If I see the headmaster, I'll pass on your message. George didn't mention that he had dropped out and probably wouldn't be returning to school anytime soon, but readily agreed. Since Zhang Zihui and Tabor are friends, he can use this relationship to make connections, which isn't a bad thing. Old Celestial Master, I'll take them to the back mountain to register, so I won't bother you any longer. After saying goodbye, Liu Xingyang led George and Wang Ming towards the back mountain. The official competition venue for the Luotian Grand Ceremony is in the back mountain of Longhu Mountain, a place where tourists are prohibited from entering and has never been developed, without even a normal path. Master Liu, old Wang, you go first. This is my first time in Longhu Mountain, and I want to wander around the front mountain for a while before heading over. After walking a few steps, George suddenly stopped heading towards the back mountain. Hearing George say this, Liu Xingyang and Wang Ming didn't think much of it. Okay, then we'll wait for you in the back mountain. For these Taoists, they had seen the Taoist temple countless times, so naturally they weren't interested. But for George, a rich second generation who grew up abroad, it was normal for him to want to wander around the front mountain on his first visit to Longhu Mountain. Wasn't it the same at Bayun Temple before? Interesting. After Liu Xingyang and Wang Ming walked away, George turned to look at a girl squatting on the ground, being persuaded to buy things, a look of interest on his face. He had carefully observed Zhang Zihui during their conversation. It was safe to say that Zhang Zihui truly deserved the title of the country's #1 expert. Putting everything else aside, the energy contained within Zhang Zihui was far stronger than Voldemort from this world, whom he had encountered in London. Even Tabor, the Dumbledore of this world, was far inferior to Zhang Ziyi. He was somewhat surprised by this, but it was understandable. After all, he was the undisputed strongest, so such powerful energy was to be expected. However, what truly puzzled him was that when he passed by the little girl squatting on the ground just now, he sensed energy within her that was not much weaker than Zhang Ziyi's. How could a seemingly ordinary girl possess such a similar amount of ki as Zhang Ziyi? This piqued his curiosity, and he wanted to stay and see what this little girl's true identity was. A divine treasure, a string of crimson glass beads. This was crafted by my master after he fought a 10,000-year-old fire kiln for over 80,000 rounds, extracting its spirit crystals. Today, not 98,000, not 9,008, just 99,8, and you can take it home. A large monk in a cassia was excitedly promoting a string of red glass beads by the roadside. The girl squatting on the ground immediately pulled out a wad of cash from her pocket and jumped up excitedly. So awesome. I want it. I want it. I want it. Sell it to me. Sell it to me. Is this guy an idiot? George blinked, wondering if he had misperceived something. Chapter 443 Feng Bao and Zhang Qiulun. You've been tricked, baby. A monk coming to a famous Taoist mountain to slay a fire kiln? You actually believe that nonsense? Just as the girl was about to pay for the glass beads, a young man in a suit and glasses stopped her. However, the girl clearly wouldn't listen to reason and insisted on buying the magical artifact that had been forged after 80,000 rounds of battle. Su Si, the great monk said, I'm very resilient, he wouldn't lie to me. Feng Bao, from the all-knowing company. George, who had been observing from the side, quickly learned their identities through the conversation between the girl and the young man. The girl's name was Feng Bao, and the young man's name was Su Si. There was also a man named Su Sen, and Zhang Qiulun, the person who had caused such a stir recently, was also there. They were all from the all-knowing company. To be able to keep the entire world of supernatural beings in check, all-knowing company is indeed not simple. After figuring out the girl's identity, George was no longer so surprised and turned to walk towards the back mountain. Unlike the various sects that only care about their own small territory, the government departments scour the entire country for talent. Besides, our country has a large population, so finding one or two exceptionally gifted individuals with extraordinary internal energy is not unreasonable. True masters aren't necessarily strong just because they have high internal energy, it's about how they use that energy. Like Sakura, she possesses more magical power than Ariel Hiraji, but if she doesn't know how to use it, she's no different from an ordinary girl. This girl may have the potential to become a top master, but it seems she isn't yet. And her mind doesn't seem quite right. After asking a Taoist priest for directions to the back mountain, George didn't delay any longer and started walking towards it. The back mountain is completely undeveloped by the Tourism Bureau, so there are no properly maintained paths. You have to create your own. Frankly, without some tools, most people wouldn't be able to reach the back mountain. After climbing for about half an hour and passing through a forest, he finally arrived at the entrance to the back mountain. And there they also saw Liu Xingyang and Wang Ming. Old Jin, over here, Wang Ming waved to George after seeing him appear. This is a simple preliminary selection. Only by passing this can one qualify to participate in and visit the Luotian Grand Ceremony. Originally, the two brothers planned to wait for George at the back mountain, but they were worried that George wouldn't know the situation, so they stayed at the entrance. George looked behind Wang Ming. There was a deep canyon, and instead of a bridge, there were ropes swaying in the wind separating the two sides. In this situation, let alone ordinary people, even acrobats performing high wire acts probably wouldn't dare to go. However, this was naturally not a problem for superhumans. Not to mention superhumans who have inherited the orthodox martial arts of various sects. Even rogue cultivators who have awakened innate supernatural abilities can pass the test with the added benefit of internal ki and greatly enhanced physical functions. The main purpose of Longhu Mountain's preliminary selection was to weed out some ordinary people. Let's go. As Wang Ming and George explained, more and more extraordinary people emerged from the woods. Some using ropes for leverage, others leaping over, and still others using Taoist magic or commanding flying birds. Most easily crossed a canyon and reached the other side of the mountain. Let's go too. Liu Xingyang and Wang Ming leaped lightly and were already on the other side. The White Cloud Temple mainly cultivates the soul and the body, so they didn't need any leverage to jump across this distance. George, on the other hand, simply apparated to the other side. He was now a wizard, and wizards couldn't jump over canyons with their physical bodies. Even Voldemort couldn't do that. Faced with this situation, a wizard either had to use a flying broom or apparition. As for flight magic, only a few wizards knew it. So apparition was the most reasonable option for him. Entering the back mountain, they soon saw several large arenas that had been built, presumably for competitions, and the arenas were already crowded with people. These are all extraordinary individuals from various sects across the country. Zyojin, you and your junior brother go over there to draw lots. I'll chat with some old friends. Liu Xingyang looked at the hundreds of extraordinary individuals in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. There were many fellow Daoists among them, as well as some he knew personally. If it weren't for this Luotian grand ceremony, he might not see them even once every few years. Master Liu, see you later. George nodded and, following the signs, walked with Wang Ming to the place where the contestants were drawing lots. The age limit for this Luotian grand ceremony was under 30, so in addition to the contestants, there were many fellow disciples who had come along. Just like Wang Ming was participating, Liu Xingyang had come along as well. Besides, there were also a large number of independent cultivators who had come for various purposes. He was very satisfied with this situation because the more people who came, the more different sex techniques and spells he could see. This was one of his reasons for participating in the Luotian Grand Ceremony. After going around to the open space at the back of the competition venue, a considerable number of contestants had already gathered there. They all seemed to be experts. I hope I don't get eliminated on the first day, that would be too embarrassing. Looking at the contestants from various sects around him, Wang Ming couldn't help but swallow hard. After all, it was his first time traveling far to represent his sect in such a competition, and he was quite nervous. Although his master had said before he left that it was just to give him a chance to broaden his horizons, he also wanted to achieve a good result and bring fame to Baiyun Temple. If he were eliminated on the first day, it would be incredibly shameful. Don't worry, Lao Wang. With your Yang Shen technique, I don't think it'll be a problem. George patted Wang Ming's shoulder to comfort him. Actually, it wasn't just comforting. He sensed that among the contestants present, there weren't many with higher internal energy than Wang Ming. Moreover, Wang Ming's Yang Shen technique would probably be difficult for ordinary supernatural beings to handle. So, as long as his luck wasn't too bad and he didn't encounter any strong opponents in the first round, he wouldn't be eliminated so quickly. While chatting with Wang Ming, Feng Bao, the somewhat dim-witted girl who knew everything, and Zhang Qiulin, the key source transformer who had the highest discussion on the forum, also arrived. However, their arrival immediately stirred up public outrage. When someone asked Feng Bao if she was there to vie for the Celestial Master's successor, Feng Bao bluntly pointed at Zhang Qiulin and replied, "I'm not here to become the Celestial Master, he is. I'll take care of any opponents who get in his way." Zhang Qiulin was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat and quickly pulled Feng Bao aside. "My dear Baoer, it's alright, you should keep quiet. So you're going to just attack, huh?" Feng Bao swiftly drew a sharp knife, her face full of shrewdness. Chapter 444 divided into 4. Who is this female benefactor, so arrogant? Wang Ming was clearly shocked by Feng Bao's audacity in making such threats in front of so many elite sects. The young Taoist from Longhu Mountain had just said that the first match was a 4-on-1 melee. By drawing so much attention, she'd be facing a 3-on-1 fight later. Judging by her appearance, she's dressed like someone from the All-Knowing Sect. The All-Knowing Sect actually sent someone to participate in the Luotian Grand Ceremony. Normally, the All-Knowing Sect wouldn't participate in such events. They usually maintain order. It's like when major sects hold martial arts tournaments. The Imperial Court would certainly pay attention and send people to prevent chaos from affecting ordinary people. But they generally wouldn't send experts like the Embroidered Uniform Guard or the Eastern Depot to participate openly. Even if they did, they would secretly support certain sects to participate, with some ulterior motive. However, times have changed, and the current situation is quite special. Since Zhang Qiulin, one of the candidates for Celestial Master, is from the All-Knowing Sect, it seems reasonable for them to participate. Maybe it's just that her brain doesn't work well. George shook his head and smiled, looking at the string of red glass beads around Feng Bao's neck. Even without prying into her memories, his powerful sixth sense allowed him to quickly judge a person. Wang Ming, for example, was the kind of person who was straightforward and didn't have any ill intentions. His feeling that Feng Baobao's brain didn't work well wasn't mockery. He genuinely sensed that her thoughts and soul were different from normal people. Zhang Qiulin was different. He could tell at a glance that he was the kind of person who was more cunning. And judging from the ki within Feng Baobao, which was comparable to that of the Celestial Master, even without any Taoist arts, the enhancement to her body alone would make her incredibly powerful. So she wasn't bragging, she truly possessed ability. Ha ha ha, young people are so energetic. Just as everyone was making a ruckus, the Celestial Master Zhang Zihui and several members of the 10 Elders walked over from a distance. It's the Celestial Master, and several of the 10 Elders, everyone shouted excitedly when they saw the Celestial Master arrive. These are some of the most powerful figures in the domestic supernatural world, both in terms of strength and power. A mere Taoist boy from Longhu Mountain actually possesses such strength. Through the gossip of those nearby, George quickly learned their identities. He recognized the old Celestial Master from the front mountain. Standing to the old Celestial Master's left was Lu Jin, one of the 10 Elders, who also possessed the Tongshan Talisman, and appeared to be over 100 years old. As for his strength, judging by the energy within his body, he was far inferior to the old Celestial Master. However, compared to the old Celestial Master and the other supernatural beings present, excluding the exceptional case of Feng Baobao, he still possessed the highest energy. To the old Celestial Master's right was an old Taoist priest in a wheelchair, who appeared to be missing limbs. He was said to be the old Celestial Master's junior brother. Behind them were two other old men, one being Lu Si, the head of the Lu family, and the other being Wang Ai, the head of the Wang family. George wasn't surprised by the strength of these 10 elders. What surprised him was the young Taoist boy pushing the old Taoist priest in the wheelchair. He looked to be only 13 or 14 years old, yet his internal energy was top-notch, even surpassing Zhang Linggao, who was also participating in the Longhu Mountain competition. Could he be some hidden genius disciple of Longhu Mountain? Zhang Linggao was the youngest disciple of the old Celestial Master. His talent and strength were universally acknowledged, and he was the only Longhu Mountain disciple participating in this Luotian Grand Ceremony. In other words, the right to inherit the Longhu Mountain Celestial Master position belonged to either Zhang Linggao or Zhang Qiulin. Even if others won the championship, they would only receive the Tongshan Talisman, not the Celestial Master's position. However, for him, it was merely a moment of surprise, not a major concern. In fact, he didn't care much about the old Celestial Master or the 10 Elders, even if their methods were superior. Their internal energy was simply not on the same level as his. His only concern was whether, given the rich cultivation system of this world, higher dimensions like heaven, hell, the heavenly court, and the great thunderclap temple existed. He didn't understand this world in his previous life, so it was difficult for him to judge. Since everyone wants to spar, let's begin. After a few opening remarks, the old Celestial Master had a young disciple bring a box for drawing lots and began explaining the rules of the upcoming Luotian Grand Ceremony. Longhu Mountain had set up 4 venues for the Luotian Grand Ceremony, with competitions taking place simultaneously in all 4. The heavenly stems written on the lots indicated the order of appearance, while the animal following the heavenly stem represented the opponent. The first day was a 4-person free-for-all. Those who drew the same animal formed a team. From the 2nd to the 7th day, there would be one-on-one elimination matches in the 4 venues until a champion was determined. If the champion was either Zhang Linggao or Zhang Qiulin, they would inherit the Celestial Master's position and receive the Tongshan Talisman. If not, the champion would receive the Tongshan Talisman, and whoever ranked higher between Zhang Qiulin and Zhang Linggao would inherit the Celestial Master's position. Old Jin, what are you? Wang Ming approached immediately after drawing his lot. It's Gui, Azure Dragon, George replied, opening his slip of paper. Wang Ming also opened his slip of paper. I am Gui Zhuk. We are both in the last match, but not in the same arena or in the same group. This is good, we can watch other people's matches and gain experience. That's good, George smiled. He didn't care, anyway, even if all the supernatural beings in the back mountain of Longhu Mountain were combined, they couldn't beat him, and the outcome would be the same no matter what lot they drew. Please return to the venue, lunch boxes have been prepared for everyone. The official competition will start at 1 p.m. After all the lot drawing was completed, the little Taoist boy in charge of registering names shouted loudly to everyone. It was almost noon now, and they definitely needed to eat lunch before the competition. Supernatural beings are also human. They can't compete on an empty stomach all afternoon. Of course. It was unrealistic to expect Longhu Mountain to invite so many people down the mountain to eat at a hotel. So not long after, George saw supernatural beings dressed in various Taoist robes, monk robes, Western suits, and Shongshan suits, squatting together eating lunchboxes. Supernatural beings from all over the country, speaking in various regional accents, gathered together to eat their lunchboxes and chat, which was really down to earth. However, this also reflects that the entire community of supernatural beings in China is relatively harmonious under normal circumstances. At 1 p.m., the competition officially began. Thought forms. Before the competition started, George created 3 thought forms, which flew stealthily to the other 3 venues, while his main body arrived at the first venue with Wang Ming. Since the purpose was to observe the various schools' techniques and spells, all 4 venues needed to be monitored. Fortunately, he could now create more than one thought form, although the more he created, the weaker his power would be. But currently, a quarter of his power was enough to sweep through the area, and he could recall them in time if there was any danger. Chapter 445 each displays their unique abilities. Feng Bao Bao, Liu Feng, Guanlinger, Zhang Ke. The venue where his main body was located was Jiahulu, and one of the contestants was Feng Bao Bao from the all-knowing group. George found it quite interesting. He wanted to see if this silly girl had any other noteworthy abilities besides her high energy. Why are they here? What a surprise. Bao Bao's in trouble now. In the front row, not far from them, stood Zhang Chulan and Feng Xingtong from the Feng family, who were also watching. Feng Xingtong seemed to know a lot about all the contestants, recognizing the other 3 at a glance. Hello, it seems you know a lot about the contestants. Is there anything special about these 3? With a quick glance, George led Wang Ming forward and asked. Although Wang Ming was a domestic superhuman, he spent most of his time in a Taoist temple and didn't know much more about superhumans outside than George. Since there was a ready-made commentator here, he could use him. Are these 3 strong? Zhang Chulan also showed a worried expression. It's Master Wang and Mr. Jin from Baiyun Temple. The 3 of them, known as the Little Peach Garden of Yanjin, aren't exactly strong, but they're a group. They're childhood friends, joined the same sect together, and were expelled together. They're not exactly wicked, just like to cause trouble and play pranks. I didn't expect them to draw lots together, and the key is that their combined skill is quite formidable. Feng Xingtong immediately called out Wang Ming and George's names, then gave a brief overview of the 3 from the Little Peach Garden of Yanjin. The Xianxia Association has only recently joined the ranks of the 10 elders, and its foundation is still unstable. His purpose in participating in the Luotian Grand Ceremony was to build good relationships, as instructed by his father. If possible, it would be even better to recruit some valuable independent cultivators into the Xianxia Association. Therefore, he has been paying attention to and collecting information on all the participants. Wang Ming, needless to say, is a famous disciple of Baiyun Temple. This Jin Bao Bao seems to be an independent cultivator, but since he came to participate in the Luotian Grand Ceremony with Wang Ming, he must have some skill. If their strength is truly impressive, we can try recruiting them into the World Society. Looks like they do have some ability, seeing that Feng Xingtong called him by name upon their first meeting and seemed to know the contestants well. George knew he had found the right commentator. What is this? This is called fate. We 3 didn't cheat. There's nothing we can do about it. Ha ha ha. I want to see which unlucky fellow will be our opponent. The 3 from Tianjin Xiaotao even below were incredibly smug. The Longhoshan Taoist, acting as the referee, shook his head upon seeing all 4 had arrived and began loudly announcing the rules of the competition. Those who lose consciousness or voluntarily surrender are eliminated. Those who cause death are eliminated and will be severely punished. The one who eliminates the remaining 3 in the arena wins. The competition begins. The fight is about to start. George's face showed interest, but after a moment, his expression froze, and he couldn't help but twitch his lips. Because the 3 from Tianjin Xiaotao Idun, upon seeing Feng Bao Bao's appearance, were so frightened that they bowed and scraped, surrendering without even fighting. It seems he knows Feng Bao Bao and has even been severely beaten by her. Fortunately, while the main body gained nothing, the thought entities in the other 3 arenas reaped considerable rewards. First was the arena where Zhang Lingyu, the youngest disciple of the old celestial master of Longhu Mountain, fought. Zhang Lingyu's opponents were a Shaolin disciple, a disciple of the Shuzi sect, and a rogue cultivator. The Shaolin disciple used the Golden Bell Shield, the Shuzi sect disciple used 5 elements Taoist techniques, and the rogue cultivator possessed an innate ability to shoot ice spikes. Zhang Lingyu, on the other hand, used the signature golden light mantra of Longhu Mountain. He wasn't interested in the innate ability, he already knew the 5 elements Taoist techniques, and he was somewhat interested in the Golden Bell Shield, a technique that could enhance physical defense. However, that interest quickly shifted to the Golden Light Mantra, because for the same type of defense, the Golden Light Mantra was clearly several levels stronger than the Golden Bell Shield. The Golden Bell Shield used energy to add a layer of defense to the skin. But the Golden Light Mantra felt different to him, it seemed to have altered the body's energy in some way, and its nature also possessed some characteristics of light magic that dispels darkness. In Taoist terms, it's about exorcising evil. It also establishes a connection with the physical body, making it far more profound than the Golden Bell Shield. The Golden Bell Shield is a technique, while the Golden Light Mantra feels closer to the Dao itself, a difference in level that's significant. It truly lives up to its reputation as the fundamental Taoist method of Longhu Mountain. It's definitely something special. After watching Zhang Lingyu's competition, Longhu Mountain's techniques have been added to his list of desired techniques. As for how to obtain them, he'll have to wait and see. The third venue is the match of Feng Xingtong's sister, Feng Xin. Her innate special ability resulted in a crushing victory, but no noteworthy techniques were found. The last venue is Jia Jingli's, but it wasn't particularly interesting either. The winning girl, Bai Shixu, possessed an innate ability to absorb others' energy. The other 3 were all weaklings, their energy was completely drained at the start of the battle, forcing them to surrender. Since people under 30 can participate in the Luotian Grand Ceremony, there are bound to be many weaklings just there to broaden their horizons, which is quite normal. In reality, apart from a few, most of the participants were weaklings. After Game A ended, Game B began, and Game B featured some techniques that he found quite interesting. One was a strange man named Xiao Xiao, dressed like a crosstalk performer from Dayan society. He cultivated a technique called exhaling ki, which involved manipulating innate ki within his body using a special method and exhaling it with the Hunha incantation, directly blasting the enemy's soul out of their body. It was said that this technique was passed down from the ancient Heng and Ha generals. He could also extract the soul from a person's body, but that was mainly used against subdued enemies, where he would extract the soul and seal it. The other was Jia Zhenglian, from Jia family village in the west, who was proficient in the art of manipulating objects and could control 12 flying knives to attack enemies. In terms of controlling flying knives, if he used his supernatural abilities, he could easily control more than 12, even 120,000. The key difference was that he used magnetism to control the flying knives, while Jia Zhenglian used ki, which was the energy within his body. The principles were completely different. He thought that if he learned the Jia family's art of manipulating objects, he could use the immense magical power within him to control a throwing knife, further enhanced by the strongest magnetic force. The power would be absolutely terrifying, with physical damage off the charts, especially in his dragon form. This reminded him of the black dragon from the fairy tale world. The black dragon's greatest strength was that all magic and energy attacks were ineffective. No matter how powerful his super magic was, it was useless. The only way to kill it was through physical attacks, close quarters combat, or controlling metal to launch physical attacks. Learning the art of manipulating objects and using magnetism to control the throwing knife might offer a chance to break through the black dragon's defenses and defeat it. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Emerging Talent. The most anticipated match in the second round was undoubtedly the one between Zhang Chulin and the White Tiger. As a disciple of the Key Body Source School, skilled in the Golden Light Mantra and Thunder techniques, everyone knew that this Luotian Grand Ceremony was organized by the Celestial Master for Zhang Chulin. Such a figure's first appearance naturally attracted a large crowd. George and Wang Ming were among them. George was very interested in the Key Body Source School, or rather, all 8 extraordinary techniques. He had chatted briefly with Zhang Chulin while watching the match. Zhang Chulin, seemingly a clueless and unreliable shut-in, was actually quite shrewd and spoke with perfect tact. Moreover, George could sense that Zhang Chulin's internal energy was considerable, placing him among the top tier of contestants. His strength should be considerable. It seems this match will end quickly, George remarked, glancing at the three opponents opposite Zhang Chulin. Judging by their internal energy levels, they were all weaklings. 3 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, I'm going to overturn the heavens. Half an hour later, the audience in the large section of the stands angrily threw their water bottles at Zhang Chulin below the stage, their mouth full of curses. Damn it, what a piece of trash, he's shameless, his methods are too dirty, he's inhuman. Facing the audience's ridicule and insults, Zhang Chulin waved his hand indifferently, then hummed a little tune and left the venue. The winner of the White Tiger event is Zhang Chulin, the referee in charge of this match, a high-ranking priest from Longhu Mountain, had veins bulging on his forehead. If this guy really became the celestial master of Longhu Mountain, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. He can even operate like this, really? Wang Ming looked at Zhang Chulin walking out of the venue, completely stunned. Sure enough, his master was right to let him participate in the Luotian Grand Ceremony to broaden his horizons. If it weren't for this, if he encountered someone like Zhang Chulin in the future, he would definitely be deceived and suffer the same fate as the three below. Playing dumb to fool others, that's quite a talent, George thought to himself, raising an eyebrow. Zhang Chulin made a show of force, letting the three who originally planned to gang up on him settle their differences before challenging him. After the winner narrowly escaped, he generously allowed them to meditate and recover before the next fight. Then, while they were recovering, he shamelessly attacked and easily won. While this was shameless, it allowed him to win without revealing his true strength, and crucially, it gave him the impression of being weak. This way, when facing a powerful opponent, he could catch them off guard. In every profession, those who are capable and shameless rarely fare too badly. It's a pity I didn't see the key source flow, but it's okay, there are many more matches to come. After Group E, it was Group C's turn. What interested him in Group C was the lineage of extraordinary individuals passed down from Zhuge Liang, Zhuge Qing of this huge family, who used the Wu Hao Qimen Dunjia technique. A very interesting Taoist method, different from the normal 5 elements Taoist methods. Users of Wu Hao Qimen can define a central palace at a specific point, fixing a certain area of space into a Qimen formation. The higher the skill level, the larger the area covered by this formation. Within this formation, as long as the sorcerer follows the formation, the difficulty and cost of using Qimen spells are greatly reduced, while the effects are significantly enhanced. Moreover, by luring or forcing, the sorcerer within the formation can deprive the opponent of good fortune by causing them to step into an inauspicious position. His mana recovery speed is extremely fast. Even if he uses it all up, it can be quickly replenished, and he never worries about consumption. However, he still finds this significant increase in spell effects useful. He wants to learn it and improve it. If setting up a Qimen formation can also significantly enhance the power and effects of all his magic, that would be great. Besides Zhuge Qing, there is another person in Group C who has caught his attention, Wang Yi of Wudang, who uses Wudang Tai Chi. He doesn't have much interest in Tai Chi, or rather, he has little interest in most close combat martial arts. After all, he mainly uses ranged attacks. If he wanted to fight in close combat, he would use the fight technique to directly upgrade into a fighting master, or become a giant and use sheer force to overcome all techniques. What interested him was this Wudang Wang Yi, who should be the childhood friend Wang Yi mentioned by his clone's older sister, Jin Yuan. He was also Jin Yuan's crush. After Bing came Ding, then Wu, Ji, Zheng, Xin, Ren, Gui, and Gui was his turn to appear. Gui, King Long, contestant enters, with a referee's whistle. George slowly walked into the arena. This was the last match of the day, and the sky was already getting dark. There weren't many spectators in his arena. The reason might be that none of the 4 were famous, nor did they come from any well-known sects or families. Most people had gone to the Gui, Zhuge arena, where at least Wang Ming, the direct disciple of Baiyun Temple, was participating. The match begins. At the referee's command, the other 3 in the arena immediately launched their attacks. However, they didn't gang up on George, but attacked each other. This was the norm for a normal match. Unless it's disciples from major sects or families, everyone knows how powerful they are, and they would choose a 3-on-1 fight from the start. It's usually a free-for-all. None of them are useful, so let's not waste time. George simply took out his wand and waved it lightly. Thunder explosion. According to what he had asked Feng Xingtong before, all three of his opponents were rogue cultivators, and all of them had innate abilities, which were of no help to him. So he was too lazy to waste time testing them. If there was a disciple from a major sect, he would slowly play with him, taking the opportunity to learn about the opponent's techniques and Taoist arts, to see if they would be useful to him. Boom! A loud explosion rang out in the arena. Except for the rogue cultivator who was closest to him and attacked him first, the other two rogue cultivators who had just been fighting were also blown away by the blast. Based on the energy intensity in the three people's bodies, George also adjusted the power of the explosion spell, which should be just enough to knock them unconscious without injuring them. The match is over. Jin Bao wins. The referee looked at the three unconscious people and immediately announced the result of the match. The few spectators in the stands also exclaimed in surprise. They hadn't expected that among these four unknown rogue cultivators, there would be such a skilled individual. Although he couldn't compare to renowned disciples of major sects like Zhang Linggao and Zhu Qing, defeating three opponents in one move was still quite impressive. I had a feeling this guy was no ordinary person. Third brother, did you figure out his fighting style? Zhang Qiulin asked Su San beside him from the stands. During their previous interactions and observations, he had sensed that this rogue cultivator named Jin Bao might be extraordinary. He didn't possess the exceptional eyesight to discern a person's true strength, but he could make judgments based on certain details. Chapter 447. Maybe we should just admit defeat? Firstly, from some casual remarks made by Taoist Wang Ming, it's clear the two had sparred, seemingly to draw. Furthermore, he learned from Feng Xingtong that Taoist Wang Ming's Baiyun Temple is one of the top sects in Taoism, so his representative's strength in the competition is definitely not weak. Secondly, Jin Bao's composure throughout the afternoon's matches was unusual. His gaze was like an adult watching children fight. While he occasionally showed interest, he didn't reveal any pressure. This was odd. Even Feng Xingtong and Wang Ming, who claimed they were mainly there to participate, still occasionally displayed unusual expressions. That's the normal behavior of a young person wanting to compete and prove themselves among their peers. If Jin Bao were extremely arrogant, it would be understandable, but he clearly wasn't. Not only was he not arrogant, but he also repeatedly inquired about the various sex techniques from Feng Xingtong, his attitude very gentle. Finally, his intuition told him Jin Bao's strength was definitely not weak. I just called and had someone check his information, Su San replied, taking a drag of his cigarette. All we know so far is that he's the only son of the Jin group, his mother is the chairwoman of the Li group, a very wealthy second-generation heir, and he lived in London before returning to China. Judging from his performance just now, he seems to be using European wizarding magic. It's alright. Wizarding magic is indeed difficult to deal with, but their weaknesses are also obvious. They basically have no close combat abilities. Your lightning magic is fast, which can counter it. If we really face it, it shouldn't be a big problem. Su Si adjusted his glasses, his face showing little tension. He had heard some colleagues who handled international relations mention European wizards. If you don't understand them, facing them can be really troublesome, but if you do, they're actually quite easy to deal with. Especially someone like Zhang Qiulin, who is a wizard's nemesis. Wizarding magic has many wondrous effects, and once you're hit by it, it can be very troublesome, but truly destructive magic is rare. And the Golden Light spell can withstand those spells with wondrous effects, including black magic. If it's just an explosion of this power, it certainly won't break my Golden Light mantra. Zhang Qiulin stroked his chin, feeling a little relieved. Then let's just put him here. That place is already full. He turned to look at Feng Bao beside him. Feng Bao was holding a map and had written Jin Bao's name in a certain spot on the map. The map also had the names of many other contestants who had advanced and were quite strong. Holy crap, Bao, how many people are you planning to bury in Longhu Mountain? Bury them all, Feng Bao replied calmly, and Zhang Qiulin couldn't help but rub his forehead. No need for that. Besides, he might not even be my opponent. Let's go. Today's matches are over. I'll tell you about some contestants you didn't see, but you should pay attention to. Su San patted Zhang Qiulin's shoulder and led them away from the spectator stands. After George finished his match, he went directly to Wang Ming's arena. The matches there weren't as fast as these, but it didn't take up much time. One of Wang Ming's opponents was a disciple of the Maotian Shanking sect, but he was clearly weaker than Wang Ming, so the match went smoothly. The Maotian Shanking sect sent quite a few disciples to participate in this competition. He had seen them in previous matches and had also learned about them from Feng Xingtong. This sect mainly focuses on talisman techniques, with the Maotian Shanking 5 Warriors Talisman, the Palm Bewitching Seal, and the Immortal Trapping Talisman, each having their own unique uses. However, the cultivation of these individuals emphasizes a strong foundation, and many talismans only reveal their power later in the game, meaning their strength is generally not strong in the early stages. This results in their younger generation's strength not being outstanding among their peers, with most being eliminated in the first round. He didn't pay much attention to the Maotian sect's talisman techniques because it was said that the Tongshan talisman was the pinnacle of talisman techniques, and studying the Tongshan talisman was sufficient for researching talisman techniques. It's over so quickly. After winning, Wang Ming was surprised to see George already waiting for him with his senior brother in the stands. He knew George was strong, but he didn't expect him to be so fast. I don't have any experts from the Shanking sect on my side, just independent cultivators, so it was resolved quickly, George explained with a smile. Liu Xingyang put away his sunglasses and nodded in satisfaction. Your performance was passable. Hurry up and draw lots for the second round. The first day was a 4-person elimination tournament, and the second day was a one-on-one advancement tournament, with a competition taking place simultaneously in 4 venues. Arriving at the open space for the draw, George glanced at everyone and saw that, including himself, there were 32 people who had entered the second round. Start the draw. As the young Taoist's voice rang out, everyone lined up to draw lots one by one. Wang Bing, that's the guy. George immediately recognized the name on the slip of paper in his hand. The Wang family was one of the most powerful families in the domestic supernatural world, with considerable influence. Their patriarch, Wang Ai, was one of the 10 elders, and had even appeared during the first round of the draw that afternoon. However, their reputation on the forum seemed rather poor. They were known for using their power to intimidate others, and there were many negative rumors circulating about them. This could actually be gleaned from the competition itself. Wang Bing was quite strong, defeating his opponent in no time, but afterwards he humiliated all 3 opponents. He acted like a spoiled brat, completely arrogant. Feng Xingtong, what kind of Taoist technique is the Wang family famous for? Seeing Feng Xingtong draw his lot in front of him, George pulled him over and asked casually. Wang Bing didn't use any Taoist techniques in his fight. He simply relied on his physical body enhanced by Qi to defeat his opponent, so his mental form couldn't detect anything. You actually drew Wang Bing. This guy is troublesome. Feng Xingtong looked at the slip of paper in George's hand, a look of sympathy immediately appearing on his face. The Wang family's most famous Taoist technique is called Divine Path, one of the 2 major schools of danking, painting and calligraphy. It allows them to draw physical objects for combat using Qi. I don't know the specifics, but my father said it's not weak. After hesitating for a moment, he whispered. Old Jin, if you're not particularly concerned, why don't you just admit defeat when you go on stage? The Wang family is quiet. He didn't finish this sentence, but it was already very clear. This means that if Jin Bao loses this fight, he'll inevitably be humiliated by Wang Bing. If he wins, given his background as a rogue cultivator, he'll likely face trouble from the Wang family. Disciples from other major sects who lose to rogue cultivators will simply return home to face extra training from their elders, who will be angry at their perceived lack of ambition. But the Wang family is different. They'll most likely send people to retaliate on Wang Bing's behalf. Therefore, since he's not after the heavenly talisman, but simply here to broaden his horizons, there's no need to antagonize the Wang family. Chapter 448 All in on me. I see. I understand. George raised an eyebrow, instantly understanding Feng Xingtong's good intentions. However, he didn't care about such things at all. He didn't understand this new world, so he chose to be cautious, deliberately concealing his strength to avoid making his clone seem too out of place. However, this didn't mean he was truly afraid of revealing his strength. The worst outcome was that he would reveal his true strength, and then there would be beings stronger than him in this world, and his clone would be destroyed. But for him, that would only be the loss of one clone. He still had many clones, and there would be new clones in the future. Therefore, hiding his strength was just a cautious approach, not a necessity. If he encountered trouble, he wouldn't mind revealing more of his strength. If someone displeased him, He would deal with them as he saw fit, without holding back. At least for now, there was no one who could pose a threat to him. However, Jin Bao, if you're willing to join our world society, you don't need to be afraid. Fight as you please, even if you win, the Wang family won't dare to do anything. Feng Xingtong's eyes lit up, and he immediately suggested. He had already learned that Jin Bao had defeated 3 opponents in one move during the competition. A rogue cultivator of this age and strength would have a bright future and was worth investing in and bringing into the World Alliance. I don't have any plans in that regard yet. If I were to consider it, the World Alliance would be my first choice. George didn't immediately rule it out. After all, he also had ideas about spirit control. At this moment, Wang Ming also returned after drawing his lot. Old Wang, who is your opponent? Zio. Wang Ming opened the lot he had drawn. He can blast a person's soul out of their body, but you can also use your Yang spirit, so you don't need to be afraid of him. Zio's Hum-Ha technique clashed with Wang Ming's Yang spirit, and neither was more dominant than the other. The outcome depended on the individual's on-the-spot adaptability and cultivation level during the battle. How do you know so much about him? Wang Ming looked at George with some surprise. George had been with him all afternoon, but neither of them had witnessed Zio's battle. How did he know Zio's information? I heard it from Feng Xingtong, George replied casually. Feng Xingtong, standing nearby, scratched his head. Did I mention Zio to you? I don't remember. It's Zhang Chulin and Feng Bao. George casually changed the subject. Zhang Chulin, Bao, who did you draw against? Feng Xingtong immediately leaned closer when Zhang Chulin and Feng Bao approached. Then, she said gleefully, Zhang Chulin, you're in trouble. You drew the Azure Talisman God, Shen Shidan. Azure Talisman God. Zhang Chulin clearly didn't know who this person was. Feng Xingtong explained, their family has an ancestral secret technique for talismans, specializing in sealing other people's energy channels. Unlike ordinary talismans, they don't require extensive preparation beforehand, making them impossible to defend against. Yexing, Jian, it's getting late. Please take everyone to their rooms. At this moment, Zhang Lingao, dressed in a Taoist robe and standing at the front of the group, instructed the 2 middle-aged Taoists standing beside him. Yes, junior uncle. The 2 middle-aged Taoist priests bowed to Zhang Lingao, then addressed all the contestants. Please follow us, let's go. George and Wang Ming followed the crowd towards their lodgings on the back mountain. Old Jin, wanna place a bet? I've opened a betting pool, how about we make a small profit? They hadn't walked far when a fat man approached with a tablet. George wasn't surprised and took the tablet. Let's take a look first. Before the competition, he had sent 3 of his mental entities to watch the matches in the other 3 venues. To better understand the techniques and Taoist arts of the various schools of contestants, he had naturally sought out commentators like Feng Xingtong. One of them was this fat man named Kang Long, an expert in intelligence gathering. In the other 2 venues, he had also befriended Zhi Jinhu and Bai Shixu. When did I meet all these people? Was it during my competition? Wang Ming wondered to himself as he watched Jin Bao make new friends. This wasn't the first time this had happened. When he first arrived at the gathering, he noticed several unfamiliar contestants greeting Jin Bao. But Jin Bao had been with him the whole time, except during his match. 1 to 40, George glanced at the odds on the tablet. He was surprisingly near the bottom. Of course, the odds were based on who would ultimately win. Although he had defeated 3 contestants in the first round, they were all weaklings, so their odds couldn't be very high. The closest odds were Zhang Lingao, Zhuge Qing, Feng Xian, Lu Linglong, and Jia Zhanglian. Wang Bing was 1 to 10, Feng Xingtong 1 to 10, Wang Ming 1 to 20, Feng Bao 1 to 30, and Zhang Jiulin 1 to 100. Forget it, I won't bet. This clone of his wasn't short of money. He was a true rich kid. His bank account had accumulated over 10 million in pocket money, given by his father, mother, and occasionally his sister. But because he spent most of his time studying magic at Flammel Academy, he hadn't touched it much. Old Wang, you can try betting some. He handed the tablet to Wang Ming. Wang Ming looked at it, then shook his head. Forget it, I only have that little pocket money. If I lose, it'll be gone. Baiyun Temple wasn't as wealthy as Longhu Mountain. His savings over the years totaled less than 3,000, and he didn't want to lose it all. George whispered to Wang Ming, Old Wang, believe me or not? If you believe me, bet everything on me. Old Jin, bet everything on you. Wang Ming's eyes widened instantly. He knew his limitations. He couldn't possibly win first place, and even if Jin Bao Bao had hidden strength, it wasn't certain. Don't worry, I have a trump card. If I win, it's all yours. If I lose, it's on me. George smiled and winked. He was definitely going to get the Tongshan talisman, so first place would definitely be his. Wang Ming was his first friend in this world. Wang Ming wouldn't accept money directly, so helping him earn some money in this way was a way of repaying him. I'll cover the loss myself, Lao Jin, you'd better do your best. This is all my savings from all these years. Seeing that Jin Bao Bao didn't seem to be joking, Wang Ming hesitated for a moment, but finally gritted his teeth and agreed, then took out his phone and transferred 3,000 to Kang Long. Actually, his decision wasn't entirely impulsive. Since they met, they had sparred more than once. And although it was always a draw, he had sensed something was off. Jin Bao Bao always performed perfectly, and even his senior brother said that Jin Bao Bao's strength wasn't as simple as it seemed. Besides, Jin Bao Bao wasn't the type to brag, so perhaps he really had a chance. 3,000 yuan, if he really won the bet, would be 1,200,000, and then he could buy whatever he wanted. He had been wanting to get a new phone for a long time, but his senior brother wouldn't buy it for him. Chapter 449 Embracing All Rivers. The accommodations provided by Longhu Mountain were all dormitory-style rooms, which were also where the disciples usually lived. 4 people could sleep in one room. Wang Ming and George knew each other, so they were assigned to the same room. Those who accompanied him, like Liu Xinggang, stayed in another room. When Wang Ming and George entered the room, they found someone already lying there sprawled out. This person was none other than Wang Yi from Wudang Mountain. I am Wang Yi from Wudang. Greetings, both of you. May I ask your names? Not everyone was like Feng Xingtuang and Zhang Long, who knew most of the contestants. Wang Yi had his own purpose in participating in this Luotian grand ceremony, so he only paid attention to a few people he wanted to follow. He hadn't watched George and Wang Ming's match and didn't recognize them. Wang Ming from Baiyun Temple. Wang Ming performed a Taoist fist and palm salute, and Wang Yi rose to return the salute. So you are Master Wang from Baiyun Temple. How has senior brother Liu been lately? You know senior brother? Wang Ming looked surprised. Wang Yi sat back on the bed. When I was little, my father took me to Baiyun Temple a few times. I almost became a monk there. Baiyun Temple was one of his considerations when he decided to become a monk, but he felt it was too close to home and he'd be easily disturbed, so he chose Wudang Mountain instead. Random cultivator Jin Bao Bao, I've long admired Taoist Wang's name. George greeted him with a smile. Wang Yi waved his hand at George. You flatter me too much? I'm not famous at all, no, I heard it from my sister. She said you became a monk after 3 years at Tsinghua University. She must have been out of her mind, George joked casually. Wang Yi was stunned for a moment, then carefully examined George's face, and guessed incredulously, surname Jin, and you look so much like him. Your sister wouldn't happen to be Jin Yuan, would she? Taoist Wang guessed correctly. You truly are a Taoist master. George gave him a thumbs up. Wang Yi's lips twitched. Alright, just as sharp-tongued as your sister. You're the younger brother she always talks about, the one studying in London. Exactly, but she doesn't know I'm studying at a magic school there. The three chatted for a while, then, noticing the empty bed remained unoccupied, they got up and went to eat the vegetarian meal prepared by Longhu Mountain. Empty beds were normal. Not all contestants wanted to stay in the dormitories provided by Longhu Mountain. Those wealthy and pleasure-seeking contestants mostly stayed in hotels in the ancient town on the front mountain, since it didn't take them much time to travel back and forth. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, George suddenly opened his eyes and vanished from the bed in an instant. Is this girl really that fierce? On the back mountain, George, invisible high in the sky, almost burst out laughing as he watched Feng Bao Bao digging away at the ground below. Next to Feng Bao Bao was the King Fu god, Shan Shidan, bound hand and foot and struggling angrily. It seemed Feng Bao Bao planned to bury Shan Shidan there first, preventing him from participating in tomorrow's competition. However, this was clearly a foul, and it would be troublesome if Shan Shidan reported it later. Oh dear, I forgot to tell Zhang Chulin. Halfway through digging, Feng Bao Bao suddenly remembered something. Quickly ran back to the dormitory, and pulled a half-asleep Zhang Chulin over. We'll bury him in a hole later, leaving only his head sticking out. I'll feed him tonight, and let him out when we're done. Everyone says I'm stupid, But I'm not stupid at all. Most of the time I'm quite clever. Zhang Chulin, however, wasn't as naive as Feng Baobao. Knowing that burying someone was absolutely forbidden, he immediately and politely untied Shan Shidan's ropes, offered him a cigarette, and apologized. However, Shan Shidan was clearly dissatisfied with being so easily tied up by Feng Baobao, believing it was a sneak attack, and wanted to fight Feng Baobao to prove himself. Seeing this, Zhang Chulin took the opportunity to have a match with Shan Shidan, using him as a sparring partner. This Chulan is quite strong, but it's only the Golden Light Mantra and Thunder technique. Why didn't he use the Key Body Source Flow technique? Was the pressure from Shan Shidan not enough? High in the sky, George stroked his chin. He had seen the Golden Light Mantra and Thunder technique before, and now he wanted to know what the Key Body Source Flow technique of the 8 extraordinary techniques was, and whether it was worth acquiring. Someone's there. Just then, Feng Baobao, who had been standing there blankly, suddenly pulled out her dagger and threw it in George's direction. This girl has such keen intuition. Seeing the dagger coming, George immediately rose to a high altitude to dodge it, and then phantom shifted away. He had concealed his presence in aura, and even in the high sky, Feng Baobao could still detect him. She was even more perceptive than a wild beast. This Luotian grand ceremony is destined to be very rewarding. Back in his dormitory, George closed his eyes and began to enter his spiritual world. Based on his current discoveries, even if this world did not have higher dimensional beings, the techniques and Taoist arts he had seen were still of considerable help to him. The most important of these was the Taoist cultivation techniques for life and body in this world. From what he'd learned recently, most key cultivators focused on cultivating their physical and spiritual life, though the Taoist school emphasized it more. For example, the White Cloud Temple didn't cultivate Taoist arts, focusing solely on cultivating their physical and spiritual life, with an additional emphasis on soul cultivation, their ultimate goal being to ascend to immortality through the Yang spirit. Dragon Tiger Mountain also primarily cultivated their physical and spiritual life. The Golden Light Mantra was merely an additional Taoist technique derived from their main cultivation method, and the Thunder Law was a protective method. Having experienced so many worlds, he hadn't actually discovered a method for cultivating physical and spiritual life. His physical strength stemmed from the superposition of his multiple physiques, the enhancement from the implanted dragon crystal to become a dragon-slaying mage, and the enhancement from the extinction virus. These were essentially one-time effects and didn't increase his strength due to his research into magic. His soul was slightly better, but still about the same. The only thing that could be continuously enhanced was the meditation method he learned in the Mage Apprentice world, which could continuously strengthen his magic power and had the effect of immortality. But in reality, it didn't offer any special boost to the growth of his physical and spiritual life. Balthazar had lived for over 1,000 years, and his physical and spiritual life remained stagnant. If things continue this way, he will indeed grow stronger through magic, but his fundamental abilities will stagnate. However, if he properly cultivates the life and death cultivation techniques of this world, he can fundamentally improve his body and soul. Furthermore, his current physical and spiritual abilities are already many times greater than ordinary people, making him a prodigy in this world. Cultivating techniques on this foundation will be incredibly efficient. Therefore, even though this world's potential is limited, it still greatly benefits him, stabilizing his foundation and making it easier to break through his limits. His current goal is to learn everything useful from all the realms, extracting the essence and discarding the dross, then integrating them to comprehensively enhance himself in every aspect. He must embrace all things, becoming a well-rounded mage with no weaknesses. Chapter 450. You're a real piece of trash. Not bad, they even set up a big screen. Now we don't have to divide our thoughts into different bodies. The next morning, after eating the vegetarian meal prepared by Longhu Mountain, George, Wang Ming, and Wang Yu arrived at the open space in front of the venue and found that a large screen had been erected overnight. The competitions would be held simultaneously in 4 venues. If you wanted to watch all 4 matches, you could stay here and watch the live broadcast on the big screen. If you wanted to watch a specific match, you could go to the venue. Longhu Mountain was known as the most powerful sect in the country, not only because the Celestial Master was the strongest in the world and had many disciples, but also because his disciples had considerable influence in the secular world. The Celestial Master had 10 direct disciples, and apart from Master Rongshan and Zhang Lingyu, The rest were not on the mountain but were in charge of affairs all over the country. There were even more disciples and grand disciples who were not direct disciples. So don't be fooled by the fact that the disciples of Longhu Mountain were holed up in the back mountain and seemed isolated from the world. They could build 4 venues on a whim, and high-definition large screens and other technological products were arranged in no time. You guys stay here and watch, I'm going to the competition. Wang Yi yawned, waved, and walked towards the front of the arena. He was one of the first competitors this morning, his opponent being Iron Monkey. The remaining 3 were Lu Linglong vs Yun, Feng Xian vs Zhi Jinhua, and K Lu vs Ling. Sometimes I feel that Master Wang is really different from the Taoist priests of Wuding Mountain. Wang Ming couldn't help but sigh upon seeing this. He had seen Wuding Mountain Taoist priests staying at Baiyun Temple. Compared to other Taoist temples, Wuding Mountain Taoist priests were exceptionally skilled in close combat and diligently practiced their fist and foot techniques, resulting in exceptionally strong spirit and energy. Wang Yi, on the other hand, always gave off a listless, sleepy look. He's not sleepy, he's the only one sober in a world of drunks, George smiled. Although they hadn't known each other for long, he had already noticed Wang Yi's unusual mental state. No wonder a rich and capable heiress like Jin Yuan couldn't forget Wang Yi. Let's watch the matches. Today's matches were noticeably more exciting than yesterday's. Those who emerged victorious in the 4-person free-for-all were all formidable fighters. Many new techniques that hadn't been revealed yesterday also appeared, keeping him thoroughly entertained. Of course, Zhang Chulin's match was an exception, as Shang Shiden hadn't attended, effectively forfeiting. With such strong clashes, the matches didn't go as quickly as yesterday, some lasted an hour, and it was difficult to determine a winner. So, the matches ended in the morning, and continued in the afternoon after lunch. It's my turn. The first match in the afternoon was Wang Ming vs Xiao Xiao. Good luck. Watching Wang Ming enter the arena, George focused his attention on the big screen. He wasn't thinking of helping Wang Ming cheat and secure a victory against Xiao Xiao, because there was no need. Wang Ming couldn't become a celestial master, he was only there for training by his sect, therefore, the real combat experience was most important. Winning or losing was secondary. It seems like it's a close match. An hour later, the matches in the other 3 venues had already concluded, but Wang Ming and Xiao Xiao were still fighting. My turn. He was scheduled for the second match of the afternoon, so he temporarily left the big screen and went to his designated area. His opponent was Wang Bing from the Wang family. The divine painting technique seems useless against me. I'd better finish this quickly and watch Wang Ming's match. Arriving at the venue, looking at Wang Bing standing opposite him, George had already made his decision. He could also turn painted objects into real things for combat. Similar magic existed in the world of magic apprentices, and the creation card and claw cards could even be created out of thin air. Therefore, the divine painting technique was basically worthless to him. The match begins. After the referee's command, Wang Bing didn't attack. Instead, he pointed at George and commanded in a condescending tone, "A mere rogue cultivator dares to fight me? Quickly admit defeat and get out of here, or I'll cripple you later." This match doesn't allow killing, but it doesn't say you can't cripple. Oh, cripple me? Then I'll see how you cripple me. Hearing Wang Bing's words, George's lips gradually curled into a smile. Originally, he planned to finish this battle quickly to watch Wang Ming's match, but now he changed his mind. He planned to play with this young Master Wang and let him experience the wickedness of the world. "You're asking for death?" Seeing that George dared to disregard his words and even showed a provocative expression, Wang Bing's anger flared instantly. From childhood to adulthood, he had never failed to get what he wanted. His grandfather always covered for him in every mess he caused. He was born on a mountaintop, and the world existed solely to welcome him. Now, he wanted the heavenly scroll, and it was one thing for disciples of prestigious sects to compete with him, but a mere rogue cultivator dared to disregard him. How could this not enrage him? He would cripple this rogue cultivator, confining him to a wheelchair for the rest of his life as punishment for offending him. His ki surged throughout his body, and Wang Bing kicked off, throwing a punch at George. This punch was delivered without restraint, aimed directly at George's face. If an ordinary rogue cultivator were hit, at least their nose would be broken on the spot. The Wang family really doesn't hold back. This rogue cultivator named Jin Bao is probably in big trouble. There's nothing we can do. He's one of the 10 elders. It's better to admit defeat early and save ourselves a beating. A beating? Probably not that easy. We'll be lucky to keep an arm or a leg. The spectators in the stands shook their heads. Everyone knew what kind of person Wang Bing was in the world of supernatural beings. Winning is uncertain, but he shouldn't lose too badly. Wang Yi lay on the stands, thinking to himself. Jin Bao was, after all, his old classmate's younger brother, and he still cared about him a bit. He could help if anything happened. However, after he discovered last night that Jin Bao's Western magic allowed him to teleport, he felt much more at ease. If he could teleport, he could at least admit defeat if he couldn't win, so it wouldn't be a big problem. Why did he sit down? The next second, the spectators noticed that Jin Bao had actually sat down cross-legged in the face of Wang Bing's attack. Is he going to admit defeat? Thunder explosion. George sat cross-legged on the ground and gently waved his wand as Wang Bing approached. Boom! Wang Bing, whose fist was less than a centimeter away from George, was directly hit by the explosive curse, instantly coughing up blood and being blasted away. Tisk tisk tisk, I thought he was so powerful, but he's just a piece of trash. What a waste of my time. It seems the Wang family is declining generation after generation. Watching Wang Bing get up again, George yawned and shook his head, his sarcasm reaching its peak. I'm going to kill you. From childhood to adulthood, he had never suffered such humiliation, especially in front of so many people. You arrogant rogue cultivator, you don't understand the consequences of angering me, you don't know my true strength. Since that's the case, then let me show you my spirit binding and commanding. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.